Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Game Informer Show. I'm your host, Ben Hinson, joined by Christmas Ben Reeves.
Hello.
And we have Jeff Marchiafava.
Hey.
And we have Kyle Hilliard.
What season am I?
Your summertime, Kyle.
Just to clarify, we filmed this on March 1st. That's why I'm
He's wearing a Christmas sweater, everybody. We have a hell of a show today, you guys. We are finally talking all about The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Kyle has played how many hours of this thing?
Oh, what's the most number of hours you can play a game? That many?
I think 74.
I think I've done probably maybe 60, 70.
Wow, awesome. All right, this is coming in fresh. Kyle, you've been very quiet and closeted about this whole thing.
Yeah.
We're going to find out all about Breath of the Wild, so it should be exciting. After that, equally exciting, talking to Jeff about 1-2 Switch.
Yeah, Horizon, such a great game, open world.
No, let's focus on 1-2 Switch instead. After that, we are going to swap some people around. Then we're going to talk about Torment Tides of Numenera. New RPG that Matt Miller has been playing a lot of. Then we're going to get to some great emails. I'm looking at them right now. They're fantastic. And then after all that, we have a hot interview with Josh Holmes, who was the creative director for Halo 4, the studio head at 343. He recently left 343, and I believe this is his first interview after leaving the studio that makes Halo. So we talk about, why he left, what it's like to part ways with the Halo franchise, who's been working on it for so long. And then also, most importantly, we talk about his career as lead designer for NBA Street and the earliest days of NBA Street, when he talks about how it originally included an odd character.
There was an Egyptian court by the Sphinx with a pharaoh kid that could shoot crazy threes, and there were some pretty goofy cheeseball elements in that game early on.
So yeah, stay tuned for that. There's a lot of good insight into what it's like to leave a AAA studio and found your own indie. He's excited, so that makes us excited.
Cool.
But for now, let's talk about the hottest Nintendo property. Everyone's been talking about it. We've been waiting to get Kyle's hot take on it. So please, Tank Troopers on 3DS.
Yeah.
What do you think about it?
I played the tutorial and I fell asleep. So that's as far as I got in Tank
Okay.
Troopers. Yeah.
I played maybe 30 minutes of it. Could not find an online match. It's a little $8 downloadable 3DS game.
It's like World of Tanks 3DS a little bit, right? Or is that giving it too much credit?
That's
Talk Zelda.
Kyle, Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild.
Zelda Fitzgerald. Tell us all about it.
Oh, God.
Breath of the Wild is fantastic. It is so good. It is one of the best games I've played in a long time. Maybe one of the best games ever, I would even say.
Kyle, you gave this game a 10 out of 10.
That's right.
Give me the evolution of that. When did you think in your mind, this might be a 10er?
When I started, it started very strong. I was very excited about it. I was enjoying it a lot. And then I was kind of wavering around that 9.75 area. And then I finished it. And I feel like the culmination of that game kind of really put me over the edge into 10, because that whole game is a build up to that final confrontation. Like, you see Ganon in the distance from the moment you start, and you can see him from almost every vantage point in Hyrule.
He's just waving on top of the castle?
Yeah, but in a mean way, like a really dismissive way. And it's just because you see him from everywhere, and every person you talk to is kind of affected by him. Like, it just really feels like this huge build up to fight Ganon, and the sprint through the castle is really exciting, and it was just this awesome finale. And that kind of put me over the edge to 10. But then, even after that, I have probably put another 20, 25 hours into the game.
Wow.
And I am still finding stuff that kind of blows me away and surprises me in big ways.
So it's like an 11 now.
Yes, that's correct.
Gosh. Are you the kind of guy that likes to play games after you beat them?
It depends on the game.
Yeah. Because I like to think that I'm going to go back and do all this stuff after I beat the game, but something about when I see credits, I'm like, all right, I'm checking out, I'm done. So I always have to do all the stuff I want to do before the credits.
Yeah.
There's a really good sense of finality to seeing the credits in the game, but there is just, Hyrule is so huge, and not just huge in size, there is so much interesting stuff in there. I was finding entire towns that I would not have found off the main sort of story after I finished the game. And even last night, I don't want to go into detail because it's spoilery, but I found something on top of a mountain that I just was totally unexpected.
Snow?
And now that's right. And now I'm focused on trying to find it again. It really surprised me. And it continued even I'll go back to the area where you start, the Great Plateau. We were recording a video that will be online at this point, some tips and stuff like that. And I was finding new areas in the Great Plateau that I had never seen that were interesting and worth exploring.
Why interesting?
Well, the sort of design of Hyrule is really fascinating. It's really memorable. Like I am almost at a point now where you can show me a screenshot and I can kind of tell you about where you are on the map because everything feels distinct and interesting. And there is, even if there's not, like the way the weapon system works, you're constantly switching out weapons. And what that means is that everywhere you go, there's an opportunity to find new things, new weapons, new bows and arrows. There's tons of them. Like I definitely have not seen all the weapons. And then even beyond that, like even if you climb to the top of a mountain and there's not like a weapon or something up there, like maybe you find a specific type of currency that's difficult to find, just having a new perspective on Hyrule gives you opportunity to find new things and mark things on your map. So even that is rewarding. So even if you climb up to the top of a mountain and don't get anything physical, you're going to be able to look out in the world and see things that you want to go explore.
Okay, so you knew a lot about this game going into it.
Yeah.
What surprised you that is spoiler free?
Oh, that's tough.
What's it better at than people will expect?
These are like tough questions to answer. What is
Well,
it better
after
at than
60
people expect?
hours, I'd imagine.
I think one thing we were uncertain about was we made like I think someone wrote in and asked us if we thought it would be like technically up to snuff because it's like a new open world, and open worlds are just historically tough. Like they are glitchy, and I really did not encounter anything as far as that felt off or like the physics didn't do what I expected them to do. The only sort of technical hiccup I found was maybe there were one or two really densely forested areas where the frame rate dropped a little bit. But otherwise,
and you were playing on Switch.
I was playing on Switch.
Have you tried out the Wii U version?
No, we do not have the Wii U version.
Okay.
So even the review, which I think we have a disclaimer on the review, pertains specifically to the Switch version.
Got it.
Yeah.
Which Nintendo says is very similar.
Yeah.
Which we did play Wii U versions like early on, like
At
last year at
E3,
E3, and it
yeah.
looked good. Technically, it looked really good. So I imagine it's going to be close.
Yeah, I feel like I don't have a sense yet, Kyle, of why this is the 10 out of 10. I mean, technically, it was up to snuff.
Yeah.
It's impressive world, but
Well-
I feel like there's 1,000 areas that we haven't.
The big
dove
thing
into yet.
is I don't know the last time that I've been so interested in exploring a world on my own. Like everything you find in that game is your discovery because the map does not fill. Like a couple things will appear on your map for you. Like when you find a shrine, those become fast travel points and they will appear on your map. When you find a place where they give you horses, what the hell are those
A
places
stable?
called? A stable. When you find a stable, those appear on your map. But everything else that you find is your discovery. And that world, because of that, the world is so engaging and so interesting and so fascinating. And because nothing feels like copy-pasted assets, like every avenue I took was surprising and interesting. And like even to like a certain degree, like magical, like that world is just fascinating and interesting to explore.
Now, to draw the comparison, which we said we were going to draw, and Dantak vomited in his mouth, Jeffem just reviewed Horizon. I think a lot of people are playing Horizon now, and they say that world is one of the most gorgeous game worlds I've ever seen in my life. I think there's plenty to explore, plenty to find. What's the difference? Does this just have...
It's not similar at all.
Is this just more of an artistic angle, or what makes this world more magical? Have you played Horizon?
I played it like 4 or 5 hours. of
Okay, let's
Horizon.
make that comparison.
Okay.
What stands out about this world compared to Horizon's
Well,
world?
Horizon is more photorealistic, but I think
There we
Zelda
go.
definitely has the edge on art direction
Sure.
in terms of just like beautiful art.
Mhm.
And they absolutely are comparable. I mean, you are like out in the world, like fighting animals sometimes with bow and arrows.
And I'm not saying those games are identical, but just in
Absolutely
terms of
not,
exploring an
no.
open world, what makes this one pop compared to other open
the
worlds?
big. So I went back to Horizon after finishing after beating Zelda, and I really don't want to diminish Horizon because I haven't played it a ton, and everyone in the office really loves that game, and I want to play more of it. But I will say that I immediately felt like I wasn't able to explore as much as I could in Breath of the Wild, because the two big things that Breath of the Wild does really well is being able to use your paraglider to get around and being able to climb literally any surface. Like that climbing is a big deal. Like being able to climb anything really opens up the exploration
well, not
in a profound way.
everything.
Pretty much like inside the dungeons you
Yeah.
can't climb because it
Right.
would kind of break the puzzle design, but outside of dungeons and shrines, which kind of fall under the same umbrella as dungeons, every surface in that game can be climbed.
Beetle?
The person,
Yeah.
I haven't tried, but if I could climb on his back, it wouldn't surprise me because everything is like that sticky, like that you can get on top of it and climb every mountain, climb
You're
every
basically
pillar
Spider-Man.
to a certain degree. Yeah, like a simple thing was like I found these huge statues. And normally, like in like another open world game, there would be it would be this kind of cool area that you could discover, and it would be this really nice set dressing of like, look at these amazing statues. But they become like these new avenues for exploration because you can climb on them, you can use them to kick off paragliding, and you can get a new view on Hyrule and stuff like that. And I mean, it just makes every inch of that game feel like a place where you can go and check it out.
Okay, let's go down tool set. Let's go down physics. Which do you want to talk about?
Tool set. What do you mean, like weapons?
Your
and stuff?
tools.
Yeah, the items in
The
your Zelda game.
Boomerangs.
And combined with
You got
like
a
the
bow.
physics of the world, the
Yeah.
physics of the new engine, all that stuff. Does it interact? Are you having crazy experiences with the different abilities?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the big things are paragliding and climbing. Like those are
Okay.
going to be what you do the most of. You do have, I mean, we haven't even talked about like puzzle design yet of the
Yeah.
shrines and the dungeons, but you have that magnet item and you have that time stop item. The time stop stuff like is mostly something that you're going to use more in combat. To like you can after a certain point you are able to freeze enemies temporarily, which is really helpful.
It's cool.
And then the magnet tool out in the wild, you can lift up certain objects and move them around. And even like I created like a seesaw actually once that like launched me up in the air just using the physics and a rock that I could pick up.
Awesome.
So one thing I like about the Zelda franchise is that sense of progression you get as you slowly you go to a new dungeon, get a new item, and then that like unlocks all these things. You can like suddenly get to certain chests and whatnot.
Mhm.
And I like that sort of leveling up aspect, quote unquote. But in this game, it seems like you get almost all of your items like super early in the game. So do you feel like you still have that sense of progression, or is
Yeah.
that lost a little bit?
No, I think it. I'm with you. Like in Zelda, there's a certain value, and even like something like Metroid, of seeing something being like, I don't think I can interact with that. I wonder what I can use to, to solve that puzzle and then come back to it later. And that aspect of the game is totally gone. But I don't miss it. Like being able to go anywhere and be able to interact, like being able to go to any shrine and instantly know, like, I have what I need to solve this. I just have to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
That leads to some really fascinating puzzle design. And I was even finding new ways to solve puzzles. Like I think I've found there's supposed to be like 100 shrines in the game. I think I've found 60 of them at this point. And even like the last 2 or 3 shrines I did still felt like I was finding new ways to use the items.
Is this game everything you wanted from a Zelda game? Does it just nail every aspect?
It really feels. It feels like this is. So I really love Ocarina of Time. Like when I played that game when I was younger, there was like a moment where you go forward in time and you learn about everything that's happened and you're in the Temple of Time. And I remember playing that sequence and being really like literally emotionally moved by that moment.
Uh-huh.
And you're giving me this smirk like, oh, we're gonna get
No smirks here. No
sympathetic
smirks
story.
here.
But like normally in that world, you roll around, you hit stuff, you kind of fool around. But I remember after that moment,
around.
yeah, like
Sorry,
throw
yo.
bombs at everything and you mess around with the world. But I remember
He's
after
a
that
teenager.
moment, being in the Temple of Time, feeling like literally feeling like I was in a holy place. Like I shouldn't be throwing bombs at the wall
Uh-huh.
in here. I shouldn't be hitting my sword.
The
against
music certainly helps in the Temple of Time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And like in a lot of ways, like as I play games, I'm kind of chasing that feeling again. Like I'm looking for like a game that affects me that much. And there are moments in Breath of the Wild where I felt like when I found something really spectacular and I really, because of the way the map fills out, like you fill out the map. It's not like, hey, we're going to put a checkpoint here. You go find that.
Mhm.
Since you find stuff on your own, you really have a sense of ownership over these like discoveries in the world. And I got that sense again where I was like, I'm in a really special place here. I shouldn't be messing around.
That's so weird. I mean, you think of Temple of Time, small space, confined, music adds a ton to that
Yeah.
holy atmosphere. I cannot logically connect that to what it's like to find an object, a creature, something in the world and think this is a holy thing.
Yeah, it's
Zelda holy. Which
It's
is
hard
a
to
certain
explain.
type of
It's just
thing.
this like weird. I think the main thing about it is just the fact like that since you're given a few checkpoints for like dungeons and story specific things, but for the most part, every discovery you find in that game is yours and yours to take ownership over, and it really just makes the world feel magical and interesting.
Any downside to this game? By the way, I'm not trying to sound negative. I know I'm coming in playing devil's advocate.
that's
but
great.
I'm trying to understand what this game is.
I mean, it really. I am curious to see what other people take away from it because this is obviously my own personal experience. Like, I wonder if other people will dislike how open it truly is because you can You can go in any direction. You don't even have to do dungeons as you make your way to Ganon. You don't have to do shrines. You can just explore.
Real quick, what's the point of doing a dungeon then?
Well, I mean, that's a little bit of a spoiler. There are rewards for doing the dungeons.
It's
absolutely.
worth it.
And there is story stuff connected to it that you'll want to get.
Always
So
worth it, though.
It's worth
Yeah,
it. you would
absolutely.
say.
You should
Okay.
do the dungeons for
Okay.
sure.
Anyways, too open. Maybe.
Yeah, I wonder if some people might find it too open. The weapon degradation system, which is something that we were unsure about.
Yeah.
Early on in that game, I continued to be unsure about it. But you do hit a point where you stop being precious about your items and you start to really enjoy using those items to the point of breaking and like throwing them in the face of an enemy so hard that they shatter and do extra damage. And like the thing I kind of had to get over like trying to find items and be like, oh, I got to save this one for later because I like this one. What you end up doing is like there's like a sword type, there's a staff type, and then there's like a big, heavy weapon type. If you like one of those three, you kind of learn to sort of look for that type of weapon.
Okay.
Like you don't necessarily find like, oh, I found this royal sword that I really love. I'm going to go find a bunch of these. Like you kind of have to get over that. And after a certain point, I really started to appreciate and even enjoy like the weapon system because what it does is it makes exploration more fun because there's more stuff to find everywhere.
Yeah. I heard you I just heard you talking to someone else in the office, or maybe it was me. I forget. I was pretty zoned out. And you said this game makes every other Zelda game look juvenile.
Yeah, I
What does
didn't
that
say
mean?
juvenile. I said shallow.
Okay.
Which is absolutely true because of how
You called them
open
baby games.
every other
Games
Zelda
for
game.
baby
You said they were
losers.
toddler games.
After you play
like-
Breath of the Wild, every Zelda game now feels like a baby game. I mean, especially if you because I played Skyward Sword a bit before jumping back into this, and I played through Twilight Princess before starting Breath of the Wild, and because of how linear those games are, I mean they're not very linear actually when you look at maybe compared to other types of games. But after playing Breath of the Wild, to look back at those games, it really feels like you're being pulled along on a string through like a series of engaging combat and puzzle scenarios. But because of how open this is, like. It really makes looking back on those games like feel like they're really constrained and shallow.
Jesus. Reeves, are you enjoying the game as much as Kyle did?
Yeah, I don't know if I can say that because I'm not nearly as far in. Like I haven't even done a single dungeon yet. So I don't know if I'm like ready to score it if I would score it, which I don't
Sure.
have to. But I am saying like I'm liking it a lot. I do like the sense of freedom I get. I'm still in that unsure stage of the weapon degradation thing.
Okay.
I don't feel like it's necessary. I think you could have gotten the same sense of like, oh, I'm constantly getting new items like you do in Diablo if they'd gone that route instead, and then you don't have to worry about your weapons breaking. But I will say at the same time, I've never like been stuck without a weapon.
Yeah.
So there's that. I really like finding shrines. I've been kind of trolling around the area just looking for new shrines and like doing those puzzles because they're rewarding. They're rewarding in an accomplishment sense, but then you're also like there's reasons to do them as well.
Okay.
And
Because
story reasons.
they become fast travel points, which is hugely
Right.
important. And then there also are physical rewards in
Yeah.
each of them. So
I think last time we talked about the game on the podcast too, we were all noting how difficult it was based on our play session. Was it just that Nintendo for that demo placed us in a tricky area, or is the game as hard as we thought?
the game is tough.
Okay.
I died a lot, especially early on because you only have a couple hearts. But the checkpoints are done well. Like it's not. I mean, it's not like Dark Souls difficult. You will run into enemies that are going to be difficult to fight, but it's friendly with its checkpoints. And then the other big thing is, regardless, you can be like literally drowning or in the middle of a fight, and you can teleport away. Like you can always leave a place of danger if you're in trouble, which helps the difficulty. Because like if you end up in a real, there were a couple times when I ended up in a place I didn't expect to be, and things got really heated. And it was just simple as like looking at the map and transporting away to a shrine that I had recently discovered or something like that.
Okay.
So that good checkpoints and the being able to teleport anytime, that helps the difficulty a lot. But this is probably I guess if you think back to maybe like some of the 2D ones, like this is definitely the most challenging 3D Zelda, I think.
Okay.
But it is also really rewarding because you get an opportunity to prepare for everything. So like you might be like, all right, I went up there, I was freezing, there were tough enemies. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make some, hot pepper dishes so I can have so I can be warm up here, and then I'm going to maybe get another potion that'll like up my strength a little bit. And then when you prepare and then make your way through that area, it's really rewarding for sure.
I think one of the things, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kyle, but like that world is really fun to explore. And when I heard about it early on, I kind of thought Skyrim is obviously an easy comparison.
Mhm.
And Skyrim world is fun to explore, but like really what I want to do in Skyrim is engage with the quests because that's the stuff that like stuff happens in the world. And instead with Zelda, like the stuff happening in the world is just sort of happening there. I'm really sensitive to spoilers, so I feel like I'm talking vaguely.
Yeah,
but like
yeah.
the stuff that you would normally find in a quest is just sort of happening in the world, and then you wander into it
Yeah.
and engage in that stuff. Like I wandered up this like mountain and I saw this creature thing that I was engaged with, and I'm like, this thing is amazing, and like it's weird that there's not like a special quest associated with this.
It's
And
all just
sort of like
natural.
fighting it, and it's
Yeah.
fun and like crazy cool looking.
You might find someone later who like wants a picture of that thing,
Okay.
or wants a piece. Like enemies drop items,
Wants
so
a
like
piece of
maybe
it?
he wants that. Yeah, maybe he wants a piece of that. So you will find those. They do exist. There are
Gotta
missions
get
in
me a
that way.
piece of that.
Jeff, I'm curious your perspective on this thing because if I'm not mistaken, your favorite game of all time is Link to the Past,
Yeah.
and then you just soured and hardened over the years.
Yeah. I mean, I played Ocarina
related
of
to
Time
birds?
and Majora's Mask and stuff, but at a certain point, I was like, these games aren't doing anything that I don't feel I've already gotten from this series, and so I lost interest in that
They're
sense.
baby games.
They are shallow games for babies.
Oh Jesus Christ! What are you guys doing?
But no,
It's getting good comments.
Don't
Good
do that.
comments.
and it's been interesting listening to everything that Kyle has said and reading his review. I have wondered and actually asked him before.
You had a really good question for me earlier today.
Reenact it. Let's go.
What was my question?
It was about Link's clothing.
Oh yeah, does Link have nipples? Which we found out he doesn't.
He does not.
He does not
Oh,
have
no.
nipples.
No
Weird.
elves have nipples.
That's right.
They're not mammals.
No, but
Kind of like Raiden and his body parts.
the thing I've been wondering, we'll just move past it. We can move past that. The thing I was wondering and that I asked him about before is how much is his love of Zelda kind of influencing, the grandness of this adventure. And I still can't really tell, but a lot of what he has been talking about has made me intrigued enough that I want to actually play this one.
Like, for example, for the sake of argument, and again, drawing Horizon, not saying they're the same game, but if Kyle was playing Horizon and dressed Aloy up in a cute little green hat and then played the Zelda theme as he's running through the woods, would he then automatically fall in love?
Well, you can't do those, and you can't do that in Breath of the Wild. So.
Uh-huh.
I mean, one of the things that's really additionally nice about Breath of the Wild for fans of Zelda, maybe not, is that it really dismisses a lot of the tropes of Zelda. Like, there's a lot of stuff that you would have expected to be in this game that's not. Like, early on, I think I even posted in our Slack group, I had pretty much all the items and was well into the game before I ever saw a rupee, which is bizarre.
That's bizarre.
Yeah. And so I don't think being a Zelda fan, I guess I'm trying to think of a good way to say this. Like, even if you're not a Zelda fan, there's still a lot here to love because there are certainly Zelda things in it throughout. I mean,
Thank
it's
God.
a Zelda game, but it definitely looks at they definitely. I mean, there's a reason he wears a blue shirt mostly. Is I think they really wanted to get away from like, look, this is something new for Zelda. This feels a lot different than past Zeldas, and I think it does.
Remember
Breath
when
of
they
Fresh Air.
first debuted this game and they were talking about like, oh, Link's a girl, or that joke was running around?
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Like,
well,
how weird was that?
he was kind of cagey in like interviews about it.
It's like it could be a
oh, maybe
girl.
we're trying to hint towards that, or maybe it could be, or some. It was.
But then they kind of turn
nonsense.
around on it. They're like, oh no, Link's a man.
He's still a guy.
Yeah, but
All the
Jeff,
women in Hyrule are actually very attracted to you. It's weird.
really?
Yeah, they're like you can go read people's diaries and
To
they talk
me
about
personally,
to Ben Reeves, the
You've
sexual
been
icon of
asleep
Game
for
Informer
so
magazine.
long, Reeves.
Sleeping Beauty is what they call me.
The takeaway I was trying to get from you, Jeff, that you never hinted at: are you going to play this game? Are you excited for this game? Now
I think I'm gonna play. I have not, I'm not on the Switch bandwagon yet. I haven't pre-ordered one or anything.
Okay.
But it's in the office, and I'm, like I said, I am very intrigued by the things that it's doing differently. So
okay,
I'm excited for fans like Jeffem and like Matt Burtz especially to like play this game, or even Dan Tack, who I think is
Right.
also kind of on the same boat. Like
Yeah.
I think they will really like this game.
the old school's all the fans who are sick of having their hands held.
Yeah, I mean this game doesn't hold your hand at all. Like you are like I think I'm trying to think if there's really not even a lot of tutorial in that first hour. It just kind of lets you go.
What about, spoiler free, what
Okay.
was your perception of the entire story?
I like the story.
Okay, and how did the story go?
There's a bad
Sorry.
guy.
Uh-huh.
I will say this of the story, which I believe is spoiler free, is that it acknowledges the sort of history of Zelda in the sense that like this is a thing that keeps happening. Is that Link and Zelda have to fight Ganon,
Mhm.
and it takes that into effect in the story, or it takes that into account for the story, and acknowledges that that's actually really hard. And it's a difficult thing for them to do, and it is much harder.
That their souls have to constantly be reincarnated.
That's right, and it's a much like even though the mission isn't dramatically different, it's much harder than it's ever been for them in Breath of the Wild, and the story sort of acknowledges that.
Because all the other ladies are hitting on Link.
Yeah, and Zelda gets super jealous.
A lot of
Okay.
romantic tension there.
You, and again, no spoilers. You hinted in the office that like I am so glad that Nintendo is so tight-lipped about this game because there are a ton of surprises that I had no idea
Mhm.
were in this game. To what extent?
Would you
are
like
these,
me to list them?
Are these 10 out of 10 surprises? Or just like little things like, oh, I didn't know this type of creature was in the game? Or is it like Metal Gear Solid 2 style surprise? I'm trying to figure out where on the spectrum of surprises.
I think somewhere in the middle. There's a couple
Wow.
of big like in the story. There's a couple of very big surprises that I did not expect. Like some things that you and I discussed and maybe even like guessed at and like, but without
Like the
spoilers.
fact that Big Boss is in it, it's a big deal.
That's a weird thing.
Venom
yeah.
Snake.
But then there are also surprises of like, oh, I didn't expect for this thing to be in the game, like in the same sense of like looking at the legacy of previous Zelda games, and also
Yeah.
just brand new surprises that I didn't expect to be happening.
Okay.
Where does it rank in your Zelda pantheon? Are you
Hanson
ready
asked
to
me
put
this
that in there?
right after I beat it. It's definitely high. Like I think Ocarina is still my favorite, mostly because that was my first Zelda game,
Okay.
and I still have a lot of nostalgia for that game. Like I really feel like I would have never pursued a career in writing about video games if I hadn't played Ocarina of
Let
Time.
alone have founded that religion based on the Temple of Time.
That's right. That's a weird thing that I kind of had to let go when I got the job
Yeah.
at Game Informer. So,
Yeah.
but
Even.
so Ocarina is probably still number one, and Majora's Mask has jumped up recently after replaying it on 3DS. I
Okay.
really love that game a lot, but it's up there in like the top three, like maybe number
Wow.
two. It's really good.
Here, just to break it down a little bit, Game Informer has a long history of giving 10 out of 10s to the Zelda series, Kyle. So this is
Yeah.
from your perspective. Is Breath of the Wild a better game from your vantage point than Wind Waker,
Yes,
Twilight Princess,
yes.
Skyward Sword,
Oh yeah,
Link Between Worlds?
yes. With a pause.
Why a pause?
Because Link Between Worlds sort of set the stage for Breath of the Wild in terms of openness and taking dungeons on in any order, and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
That's high praise, man.
Yeah, I feel like Breath of the Wild in some ways is like maybe the closest analogy is actually Wind Waker if the ocean was not boring.
Did you play the Wii U remake of that one?
Yeah, I played about half of it.
Okay. I reckon anybody who never played Wind Waker or was middling on Wind Waker, I recommend going back to that because I think that remaster is just an amazing way to take
Yeah.
that game and
Yeah.
make it shine even brighter.
So your 10 is better than everyone else's 10. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, I thought about it a lot. I went on walks around my neighborhood.
Is it better than Overwatch?
Well, yeah, for me, yeah, I'm not a big Overwatch
Or
guy,
Bioshock?
so.
Kyle, this is very
Yeah.
exciting. I feel
Do you
like
should we go down the list of 10s
no,
like
we
you made Dan
should. No,
Tattoo?
no mortal man should ever be inflicted with those wounds.
Oh
it's
gosh,
far too
yeah.
tough.
Tack was super tormented by that.
Yeah, Dan
still talks
Tax,
about it.
He's like the Terminator at the end of Moonwalker. Like it takes a lot to hurt him. That was a weird analogy. Anyways,
Moonwalker.
yeah, when Michael Jackson turns into the giant robot at the end with
the video
laser
game?
eyes. No, the video,
Oh, okay.
the film Moonwalker.
The short film?
Yeah, starring Joe Pesci. It's amazing.
Hey,
Never watched
you
that
want
whole
your
thing.
pen? I'll give you a pen back.
Anyways, Kyle, this
You're
is
really funny.
exciting. We should be really excited about Breath of the Wild, right? If people
Yeah.
haven't picked it up yet.
I am really excited for you guys to play and the wider internet to play because I feel like even after like 60 hours and doing more than half the shrines, I still feel like I have not seen all that game has to offer by any stretch. of
There's
the
going to be some
imagination.
fun videos rolling out of this
Oh
thing.
yeah, I can't wait.
Awesome. Hey, Reeves, we need to free up a chair. And I
Oh,
was
no.
hoping we could just kind of get you out
Get rid of
here.
Jeffem.
Well, kind of. I really would keep you, but that sweater is very ugly. You've got to go. All right, Ben Reeves is gone,
Whoa.
and Jeff Cork is here. Welcome, Jeff Cork.
Hey, how's it going, buddy?
Good. We got you as the real action expert here at Game Informer.
I'm a 1-2 switcher.
Oh, you're holding the mic up to your
So-
face.
An
Like
old
some kind of
radio trick.
professional.
The other day in the office, Jeff Cork and Jeff played through all of 1-2 Switch's games, the full lineup, and it was fun to see the raw reaction to this thing. Here's the thing.
Rah reaction.
The raw reaction. With 1-2 Switch, it's easy to take that snarky, knack-esque approach to this thing, and I don't want to come in and have this be just a joke fest. Not a single joke will be committed during this segment.
No,
I
it's
actually
very
want to
serious.
know
Uh-huh.
how is 1-2 Switch as a product.
Okay, he's writing the review, so let me step in real quick. I'll give you my take. First of all, just to set a scene for you.
Yeah.
So you can temper expectations and know like where we're setting calibration. I love WarioWare.
Uh-huh.
I thought Wii Sports was fun,
Yes.
and I still think that one of our biggest mistakes at Game Informer, aside from not making Shadow of Mordor Game of the Year, was not including Wii Sports on the top 200 games of all time. I think we
Yes.
blew
Easy.
that,
Okay.
Yep.
and I get very upset when I think about it, so I shouldn't have thought about it.
And Nintendo Land?
Nintendo Live was completely fine. Had
Okay.
some super fun times with it
Yes.
when we were like a group of us playing those games.
Yes.
So I'm not opposed to mini games, even micro games.
There we go. Okay.
Now
And
I've
I'll
said that.
say I was an outspoken fan of Knack too.
Okay, there we go. So we have mini games, micro games.
Uh-huh.
What about atomic games?
Atomic games like nano games? Nanites?
What would you call 1-2 Switch's collection of games, Jeffem?
Garbage.
Yep.
Okay, look. I said there's going to be no snark, but
No.
it
It's not
needs
it's
to.
a
It's not
descriptor.
snark. It's not snark.
It needs to be said.
Yes, it is offensively just shallow and bad. It is a bad collection. It is, and I was just ranting like a lunatic to Cork about this.
He shook me by the shoulders.
I was. So why aren't you listening to me? I think Wii Sports, for all the guff that it's gotten from people,
Yeah.
I think those, small collections of mini games, all of those did a great job selling the potential
100%.
of that technology.
Yes.
And they were all fun, and they all made you want to grab other people and play them with you.
Yes.
And this is the exact opposite of that.
You will lose friends if you try and play
You
1-2
will
Switch with
lose
them.
if you bring this to your roof party. They will throw you out.
Okay,
This
let's.
is like the worst brand ambassador to a new console you can imagine.
Yes.
Why?
Because they are so shallow that you're not going to want to play them more than once, and a lot of them show the limitations of the actual technology as opposed to the potential of them.
What
like,
do you mean?
Like for one thing, for instance, I don't know if this is what you have in mind, but you are constantly putting on the strap or taking off the strap.
It makes you attach the strap? It knows when the
It
strap...
recommends that you do it, and
Okay.
because we're cool, like guys who follow the cool rules.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
some
Go
games
along with it.
you really do have to take it off because you put it down and it has to sit flat or whatever.
Oh.
But a lot of the games are just based on, it's basically like the hand slap game of who can react the fastest.
Mhm.
And from a technology standpoint, that's not doing anything that the Wiimote didn't do. I mean, the Wii remote, like we said, the Wii Sports games actually did a lot more impressive stuff with the technology.
Mhm.
It's not anything that your smartphone couldn't do in terms of just registering when it moves.
I think a lot of it too comes to there's this really strange insistence with these games that they're saying, look your opponent in the eye.
yeah.
So they've got the instructions and interesting things are happening on the screen or your television, however you choose to play. But it does not want you just disregard those. Look your opponent in the eye and listen to these audio cues to play the game. So you have a table tennis game. You
Yeah.
do not see any representation of what is happening in the game. It's just based on audio. The Joy-Cons do not have speakers in them. So you're listening to like audio cues kind of to know when to swing it.
yeah.
It's almost like this piece of conceptual art you see at a children's museum that doesn't work, and you're like, all right, at least 3M paid for that.
And again, the tennis one and the baseball one, were both basically Wii Sports games that actually, like how hard you swung mattered, like
Yeah.
the angle and everything actually mattered in the game. So they're doing these things that they did 11 years ago, but they're way less impressive and they're not as fun.
Does anything show off the tech well for the
Yeah,
Switch?
there are a couple, which I probably should have added that as a caveat before all the ranting. But there are a couple that do, that make use of the HD Rumble. I think the best one in my mind is the safe crack one.
Yeah.
Probably where you hold it sideways and you're twisting it like it's
A nipple?
like a nipple.
Uh-huh.
It's a purple
like
nipple.
the number dial on a safe. But you can feel it actually, like the rumble is precise enough and small enough that it feels like you're going through the numbers.
I love that feel too. I think I'm into this.
It kind of feels like you're clicking through actual numbers. And there'll be one that's just, a hair longer, and that's where you have to pause for it to click in.
Okay.
And so that is a cool demo, but then they don't do anything beyond that of just like who can do that 3 times in a row.
So this entire game comes down to, that seems like an okay thing to try.
Yeah.
Do you want to spend $50 and do that for
Yeah.
how long?
It seems like
that's the other problem.
it should be at a kiosk. It should be shown behind
Exactly,
closed doors to
yes.
developers showing off the tech. This is not a product that you should spend any amount. money for.
I would honestly hesitate to even pack it in with the Switch for free to show off the things, because a lot of the other ones, they're like dancing ones where they want you to do all these poses and things, and what you're doing really doesn't matter. Like, we did the dancing one, and as soon as it started, I just went like this.
He's flailing his arm wildly.
Yeah. And then at the end, it gave me an A for rhythm. And it's like,
To be fair, though, I saw you at your wedding, and you're doing a very similar dance.
yeah, but it
Metro
wasn't good.
Mafalfa.
It wasn't good then, and it's not good now. But those are the kind of things where, you have this new piece of hardware, and you play something like that, and you realize, like, okay, it doesn't really actually matter what I'm doing. It's not registering it. Like the tech doesn't seem as impressive. There are other ones where, it just doesn't work as well as you think it should. Or, like the ball one. You have to count the balls. It's cool. You can kind of feel what's going on, and it's a different.
It simulates the rumble of balls shifting around in the
and
controller.
it's a different sensation, but it's still not accurate enough that you can guess right most of the times. And so you do it, and I watched your guys' impression when you played it at the event
New
that they
York.
had earlier, and your reaction was the same as mine, which is that's kind of cool, but I couldn't really tell what I was supposed to be able to tell from it. So, at least with the safe one, like, that's something that you can actually do, and it feels good.
Yeah.
But then even there, they don't build off of it into something that you would want to replay more than once. Or
Okay,
twice.
let's go the best game. in the
Sneaky
1-2.
dice.
Okay,
He
this
likes-
is out of what? How many total here?
28.
28 total. The
yes.
best game of all of them is called Sneaky Dice.
He
Sneaky
likes
dice.
sneaky dice. Yeah. So basically, you both hold it and you shake it, and that's you rolling your dice, and then you flip it over,
Uh-huh.
and it will vibrate how many dice the other opponent has.
Now, listeners at home, I recommend getting a pencil, a pad and paper if you have an abacus of some sort, because this game is just the most complicated thing.
Okay.
It's like Calvin Ball in Ben's mind,
Yeah.
which is ridiculous because it's very simple.
Kyle, for a normal person at the table, you want to have the higher number of points, and if you get
Yes.
doubles, you'll get more points. That's the abacus part of it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and the trick is like talking to your opponent. Like,
Yeah,
yes.
Cork,
You-
like I can tell Cork, like, hey, you got something here. I could be lying to him.
You want
He
to
doesn't
bluff
know.
them, but again,
So you have the rumble giving the amount that is in the other person's
The other
controller.
person's.
That is
Yes.
the only reason you're not playing this with real dice is because it's rumbling.
yeah, and that's the problem again too. Like, the fun of it has nothing to do with the actual technology. It's not technology that anything else couldn't do, and it is a game that we could just play if we had 4 dice between
Uh-huh.
us.
Yeah, you could be doing this game. You could play it on PS4. You could play it on
You can play it on
PS3,
N64 with a rumble pack.
N64 with the Rumble Pack.
You could play it on your table with 4 dice, literally.
Yeah.
There's
You just
nothing.
gotta sneak a peek at
Yeah,
your
there's
opponent's
nothing
dice.
special about it.
Yeah.
It's the same, with like the quick draw game. You have quick draw where the first person to fire when he says fire.
Mhm.
Then you also have fake draw, which is the same thing, but sometimes he'll say different words that begin with F instead of fire.
Which is kind of funny because he goes, flower!
Yeah, it is kind of funny, but as a game,
Mhm.
we can do it with finger guns, and you're going to get the same amount of entertainment.
How much are you
from it.
charging for these finger guns?
$50.
Okay, all right.
I'll show you how to make it.
I think that's
for
actually a really good
$50.
point about like it's just as fun otherwise, because the other thing is they have actors that they hire to perform these visuals on screen. Where if they had gone the WarioWare route and at least had like kind of that cool art style
Yeah,
that
there's
WarioWare
there's
has,
a
like maybe it'd be
quirkiness to it, and
Yeah.
aesthetic.
It's really disappointing just on a Nintendo front to think of Nintendo. I consider some of the greatest developers of all time, and to think like understand. I'm sure this was a tight timetable, but this is what they get out of the
Yeah.
gate with.
They
It's
can-
really disappointing.
They can make mini games. They're
Yeah.
good at making mini
Yes.
games.
They can make micro games.
They're good at micro games. They're good at all kinds of games. And
Yeah.
there's no, there's like a team battle that you can kind of do, but otherwise there's no way of keeping track, from one game to the next who's ahead or behind or anything. There are very few that actually, there are a couple that have variations on it, but not many. It's just
it's a simple presentation style. I guess it's slick, but I think you mentioned yesterday, Jeff, I'm like, this is basically a lackluster game jam collection.
Yeah, not
Yeah.
even. You would get laughed out of a game jam if that's what you had after 12 hours of programming.
And also, there were extreme loading times.
There were some
Yeah.
of them
The pacing.
inexplicably have loading times
Yeah.
For loading up,
to replay, quick draw, where what they're loading is two guys standing there aiming
a
guns
video
at each other.
file.
Yes.
Yeah.
what happened?
And the pacing of it, like going from game to game, just seems like the loading times and then the introductory videos.
Yes, some of them you can skip, but they're still going to give you more directions after you skip through it, and it's just
Perhaps there's like an option that lets you just rapid fire, which would be fantastic because otherwise it is just this boring slog just to get like, I just want to go like play a game that is literally just making a gesture like this, but you have to sit through like a minute and a half of exposition before.
There's a baby game,
there's a baby game. And I think
and then we're not talking about Zelda anymore.
no. Yeah, it will basically show a baby. You're supposed to cradle it and make it go to sleep. And I
On
think
the actual tablet.
yeah, it's the perfect poster child for this game because it is as fun as taking care of a crying baby. There you go.
Is there anybody you'd recommend 1-2 Switch for?
The parents of the actors in it.
Seriously,
Because it's their first and last gig they're getting. So
if
they
you
need
want to,
evidence.
if you want to show off the Switch, show them Zelda. Be like, here's
Yes.
here's a franchise you're familiar with.
paying
This
the
game
same
is fun as
amount.
hell.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it is like, and there are going to be some people that are going to hear this and they're going to be like, "Hey, stop being so highfalutin." Sometimes you just want to play some fun mini games with your bros. It's like, nope, go back to
It's-
the Wii and play some
Get
of those.
Wario
things.
Aware
or
for the
do
Wii.
Mario Party or Fusion Frenzy or whatever
Anything.
other collection of mini games because they're just so shallow and again I feel like if you're going to put together a collection like this that's all based around the motion controls and those new controllers, they just don't do a good job of showing off the new capabilities of it, with the exception of a few that use the rumble. But
Woof.
I have one nice thing to say about 1-2 Switch.
Let's hear it, baby.
go for
I
it.
enjoyed watching YouTube play it
Oh,
from my desk.
Yeah, but
It
you
was kind of
enjoy watching us getting tortured too.
That's true.
Because you're sick.
I enjoy watching you guys chat with each other and make jokes. So
Yeah.
this is basically the same thing, except sometimes your arms are moving more.
Mhm.
Let's play the dice game again.
oh, I like the games where the object is to not move. That's
Yes.
really hot gameplay. So good job.
Yeah, there's it's called Zen,
Yeah.
and you're supposed to do a pose, and then
Yep.
you hold it, and you have to stay still. And Cork and I did it for like a minute, and then it just went to a draw because neither of us moved.
You made the reference that it at times can kind of feel like Johann Sebastian Joust, which came out for PlayStation
Yeah,
a while ago. It's been on
There's
PC for
there's
while.
a plate spinning game, so you're supposed to hold it and you move it like this. And you're not supposed to look at the screen, even though that's where it shows you if your plate is moving around or not.
Yeah.
But basically, it kind of encourages you to try and push the other person or throw them
That
off.
seems like that can be fun.
Yeah, but it's not as fun as Johann Sebastian Joust either. Like they don't build it out with anything. It's just a thing that you do for a minute and then you're back into
You're
the...
using that tone too. Like that could be pretty fun. Kind of like when your child is learning how to ride a bike and immediately careens into the garbage can and knocks it over. You're like, that's pretty good for riding a bike. This is a company that is asking money for a product.
Yeah.
So that could be pretty fun. Does not cut it. Good day.
Good day. All right, and with that, I think we're gonna move on to Torment, Planescape of Rumenera.
I'm
Tides
out.
in Rumenera. All right, so thank you so much, you two, and actually, you and Kyle. Do you want to clap out of here if you'd be so kind?
One.
Oh.
All right, we got Suriel Vasquez now. Welcome, Suriel,
Hi.
and the great Matt Miller,
Hello.
the holy Matt Miller. Welcome.
Think
to
I got
guys.
holes in me? Is
I
that?
don't know.
Are you throwing shade?
No, not at
Okay.
all. You guys are here to talk about Torment, Tides of Numenera, because no one else wanted to. No. This game, Miller, I feel like you're on a crusade saying people are overlooking this old school RPG.
I'm not. I don't fault anyone for overlooking it. I don't think it's a great release date, to be honest. It's Horizon Week. It's Switch Week.
It's Night in the Woods week. As
Yeah.
Serial, are you enjoying that game?
I beat it. Yeah, I loved it.
Also overlooked. But
Yeah.
what is this game and who is it for?
Torment Tides of Numenera is the spiritual successor to Planescape Torment, which is another game that a lot of people overlooked.
Don't turn your podcast off. Stay with us. It's one that people always bring up, like
Yeah.
when you talk about the greatest writing in video games.
Yeah, yeah.
People, like the hardcore, cool PC crowd, will always bring up that old game
Yeah,
and be
yeah.
like, if you haven't played that, you can't even talk about the subject.
I mean, one of the interesting things is that like there were games like Baldur's Gate that were as close to sort of the mainstream CRPG, right, as you could get back in that time period, and then Planescape Torment came out, and it was like the weird quote unquote like thinking man's game or something, right? Like it was like this weird existential exploration of identity and stuff like that. That the main character had this weird amnesia thing going on,
In an RPG?
Let me write this down.
Miller.
and it was a very strange setting. It was by a wide margin the weirdest of the old D&D second edition campaign settings. Planescape, which
Is
was,
it like an ethereal,
yeah,
funky zone?
Planescape was just the idea that like let's take the concept of there being these like other planes of existence, which has always kind of been there within the D&D fiction, and let's do a dedicated setting about people who like live in this city that is at the apex of all these different or this nexus, this meeting point of all these different dimensions.
So people are like phasing in and out of existence as they...
Well, they just kind of like live in this strange place. I mean, it was also about traveling between those other dimensions,
Okay.
but it focused. It was much weirder. It had its own sort of like language thing going on, where all the characters spoke with this weird slang, and it was just very strange.
So that's the old game, and now
That
there's a
was
new
Plants-
game called Torment.
Yes,
that
which-
is available on consoles and PC. So what is this, and how does it connect to that? And is it D&D? What?
It isn't. So the weird transition there is that like what they are doing a spiritual successor for is the sort of feel of that game, right? But they're not connected with D&D anymore. They are instead connected to a setting called Numenera, which is a tabletop RPG from Monty Cook Games.
Wait a minute. So they're abandoning D&D because those rights are complicated.
Sure.
But instead of just making something new that's inspired by that, they're connecting it to a separate tabletop game.
That's right.
Okay. Cork, are you following this? Are you on board for this?
Numenera, baby. Money Cook Games.
So the important thing to understand really is that like there is a legacy here, but it's an unusual one. The legacy they're trying to follow is one of like, let's focus on what the feeling of that game was, right? The idea that is very bizarre. It had weird characters. It was less focused on combat and more focused on like conversations and non-combat solutions to crises, that kind of thing. And that's what they've done with Torment. It's this very unusual setting. And it's got a great backdrop of RPG progression systems, and when you get into combat, the combat works well, and it's an interesting kind of system. But it really is focused on these kind of conversations and dialogues and reading of text that makes it almost like reading a sci-fi novel more than playing a game, except you're dictating how it moves forward.
This sounds like Night in the Woods, Surreal.
I mean, it's different. I mean, they're both very similar in sort of they'll both get you to think about your place in the world.
Okay.
The way that Torment goes about it is that they sort of, I guess I can liken it to the first time you go to like a big in-depth astrology or astronomy class, and they tell you, oh, planets form over the course of billions of years, and the planet was molten for like hundreds and thousands of years, and you'll get histories from people that are just like decades and decades and hundreds of years long, and they'll make you feel very small, like a very small part of that universe. Like in the first town you encounter, there's a character named Genocide. his
Great.
and
It's
he's like
Todd
this,
McFarlane.
No, this is actually a
Nation.
great example of the weirdness of this.
he
this
looks
universe.
like a guy who would be called Genocide what looks like.
He's got
But
these big spiky
yeah,
armor.
he looks like a giant
pieces.
robot from the 90s.
He was in
or something.
Guar. Okay.
Yeah, basically. But when you talk to him, he just looks like this guard who he just happens to be near. I think it's a fountain or something. And you talk to him, and he was just, oh, my story is that I was a race of warriors that we ruled the planet for several years, for several hundreds of years or something, and eventually the humans defeated us and enslaved us, and now they forced me to guard this one area for the rest of my life, but I'm immortal, so I will never die. So I get to see. So like his
It's his punishment.
Yeah, it's his punishment is to live forever and see peace, basically, for the rest of
'Cause
his
he's a race of
existence.
warriors.
Yeah, because it's a race of warring people. And he talks about, well, at least I get the satisfaction of seeing everyone around me die. And so
He will ultimately be the victor.
yeah, he will
because
win
he will
out in the
outlive
end.
all
Yeah.
things.
And so it's this extended dialogue tree, and as far as I've played the game, he
No.
never comes up again.
No,
That
you
is his
don't.
entire story. He is just one person in this small town.
The weird thing in Torment is that every single character that you meet has a crazy story like
Yeah.
that.
So it's just
and
a
there are
weird-
hundreds of characters.
So it's just a funneling down of like, man, I've had 1,000 different one-off sci-fi ideas,
Yeah.
and now every character's, hey, what about this? Have you ever thought about this angle? This is what it's like, and there's just no rules, really. Everyone's just free to tell an interesting
Right.
little anecdote that'll make you think about a concept.
I mean, I don't want to imply that nothing happens. There are main quests.
It's the Seinfeld of cosmic horror.
It's not that.
Okay.
There are main quest lines that are carrying you forward. The main story focuses on the idea that there is this one man who, at some point in the history of this world, has discovered a way to transition his consciousness from one body to the next, and as such, he has become what people call the changing god.
Like that Denzel Washington movie nobody remembers.
It's
the name of.
exactly like
That's
that.
just
Okay.
like that. And you, as a character in the story, wake up falling from orbit.
Speaking of Fallen,
And I want to. And by the way,
That is
I want to. After I tell this
Yeah.
story, I want to ask Jeff what happened in his
Okay.
instance here. But you're falling from orbit. You have no memory of who or what you are before this, and you're about to hit the ground. And you have a few moments to sort of look around and think about things as you fall before you apparently die.
Sounds like my first marriage, Jeff Cord.
And-
prom night.
It turns out that you are one of the cast-offs, one of the bodies that has been left behind by this guy who casts off old bodies and goes into new bodies, and
they call you Cast Off?
the name of your character is the last cast off.
I like that idea.
And-
So it's such a video game thing. Like, it's the equivalent, for analogy, Cork will understand. In Driver in San Francisco, if you're driving just your car off of a cliff and then you teleport out at the last second, like, what's the story of the person left in that car?
Yeah. So you
Okay.
are this guy. You die basically. Part of the idea is that these cast-offs are built to be very powerful and regenerative or whatever. And so you wake up in this weird place that you've crashed into, and the story sort of proceeds from there, with you trying to figure out who you are, who or what the changing god is,
Okay.
kind of understanding your place in the world. It's very sort of like focused on like this metaphysical, philosophical kind of thing.
Yeah. And this is from the Wasteland 2 team? Is that right? Okay.
I think it's powered by the Pillars of Eternity engine.
It is,
right?
yeah.
Oh, so basically, I'm trying to figure out the audience here. If you like Pillars of Eternity, Wasteland 2, kind of that new age revival of the old CRPGs, and you also just like chilling and thinking about some big concepts.
I think that's too limiting.
Okay.
Here's what I think this game is for. I sometimes have a sense, even though I love classic fantasy and science fiction, I have shot a lot of aliens from a spaceship, and I have fought a lot of dragons with a wizard staff in my left hand and a sword in my right. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, brother.
Like, these are the core kind of conceits of fantasy and science fiction storytelling are there because they're really fun. But for somebody who has played or read or watched a lot of that stuff over their life, there is a kind of malaise that can come on. of like, dragons are awesome, man. I love dragons, but man, another game about killing dragons, another novel about, coming of age as a young wizard. Like these are things that like these tropes show up again and again and again in speculative fiction of various types. Numenera is the answer for people who are like, I want something completely different. I still love speculative fiction. I love the idea of like exploring the outer edges of like what's possible and having kind of like weird musings about the ways that the future could be, or what might happen if I met a creature that's an entirely different species from me, stuff that isn't real, right? But they're sick of the normal stuff. That's who would like Torment. That and somebody who's willing to do a lot of reading.
Yes, it's a lot of reading.
So I started playing the game.
Please.
I was super excited because I had like done a couple of seen some videos and posted them on the site, and it looked like a super interesting game. So I'm like, here we go, fire this baby up. And it starts off. There's like some text, and there's like swirling void in the background, and this voice is like, "You awaken in a body. Your skin is hard and tough. You are a boy or girl." I'm like, I'm gonna be a lady. All right. You have curves and hips, and you're falling down. You're falling
Were
down.
you the narrator for this game?
I might be. It was an extended riff. They said go with it. So you're falling. I'm like, go faster. And it's like, all right, you go down and you make your body shaped like a javelin or whatnot, and you're just hurling down. What do you want to do? You could like choose to look around or stuff. Keep in mind, this is just all you're saying is text and this black void. I'm like, go faster. And I just do that a few times, and then I basically hit terminal velocity, smash into the planet, and it kicks me to a game over screen. So I didn't see. I immediately went back to Overwatch. I still have not seen a single frame of gameplay for Torment, Tides of Numenera, but I'm definitely.
That's
curious.
the canonical ending in your mind.
In my mind, that hero, the cast off. Yeah.
There are things beyond which even the last cast off cannot recover. And Jeff found them immediately.
Exactly. They gave me a trophy. And I was like. Because I knew that one of the conceits too is if you die, you go back to this loop, right? It's like a cycle. So I thought, oh, cool. Now let's see what really. Not game over.
Oh well. When your brain doesn't even exist anymore, maybe you just can't.
You're not Wolverine.
Yeah, no. I think there's things you can't survive. But yeah, like in between sequences. When there's lots of times in the game that you do die, like someone stabs you and you die, or something like that. And when that happens, you enter a labyrinth in your own mind where there are figments of consciousness of sometimes other people who are living there, and you interact with them before you return to the land of the living to.
So this lives up to the old game in your mind, then?
Oh, I absolutely think it lives up to the old game,
Wow.
and more so. I really, really like. The ways that they keep things bizarre for every step of the way. You keep thinking you're encountering something that's like, this super weird thing must be the definitive weird thing in this game. And it's not. It just keeps getting stranger. And as I was alluding to before, there is a main quest about your identity and about your connection to the changing god and all that kind of stuff that does weave through the whole thing. But there are there's constantly characters and interactions that you come into contact with that don't have any particular relevance to that, but they're just interesting. And I found myself at times, I mean, sometimes it's literally just you pick up a weird item, and it's not like a special powered item or anything. It's just a thing that you found, what they call an oddity, but and it could sit in your inventory for the rest of the game, and you could do nothing with it. But if you do look at it and you say, oh, it says I can use this item. It's just this weird sphere. All right, we'll use item. And then there'll be this whole lengthy dialogue options of things where you have choices of like, well, when you touch the sphere in this particular way, it opens a vortex into another dimension and your mind is pulled into it. What do you want to do next?
And this will just be in the middle of
something else.
It's like if every episode of the Twilight Zone happened at once.
Yes.
Basically. So it's like while this is happening, now this is also happening. There's this strange other world, and there's also this other alien species that's going to kill everything.
If you've listened to my podcast with Jeff Corker, we talk about Twilight Zone for every episode. We do have a unified Twilight Zone theory, so we know exactly what you're talking about. So.
Wverse.
I think to go back to what like I was alluding to before, it's that you are in a constant state of wonder because almost everything you encounter is something that is not a trope that you've seen used.
Love it, yeah.
In a billion other games. Just to throw out one more example, one of my favorites is this guy that you run across who's not. I mean, he's vaguely connected to one side quest at one point, but there's one guy you run into. It's a merchant stall, and you go up to him, and he's got a name, and I don't remember it off the top of my head, but. You meet him and he's got this one name and he's like, and you look behind him and there's another guy with the same name and you're like, but he's older. And you're like, is that your father? He's like, no, that's me. That's just me when I'm older. And you're like, what? And he's like, yeah, that's me when I'm older. Apparently in a couple of months sometime, he won't tell me when, I'm going to get sucked into another dimension that pulls me back in time. And I'm going to travel across a million different dimensions and fall in love and have all these crazy adventures before I get plopped back down in this dimension when I'm younger and I'll meet myself. And sure enough, you go talk to the old guy and he's like, yep.
Checks out.
That's what happened. And that's just a guy. That's just a guy that you meet and he's like, hey, did you want to buy anything?
Sell me your trinkets.
Like, it's weird stuff like that. And I love that about the game. I mean, at times, if taken in heavy doses, and
sounds like the writers took some heavy doses.
if you're playing it nonstop for hours on end, like I was when I'm reviewing the game, there's the potential for it to be like, can someone just be like a guy who just will talk to me?
Is this like an album that is like just comprised of guitar solos?
Yeah. Yes. I think that's a good comparison.
One thing to note is that Miller, you said you played on PC, right?
I did.
I'm playing on a PlayStation 4 Pro, and it's really stuttery in terms of frames. So
Yeah.
if you have the option, I would say go on PC.
I would agree.
And the other thing is that this game looks like a game that it was a successor to a 2001 game. I think that's when
it's a little Diablo 2-ish.
Yeah, it looks like Diablo 2. Like you zoom in on those models and they don't look much better than when you zoomed out.
I mean, it definitely
it leans a lot on the text, I think, and
yes.
I don't think that's that big of an. It's almost like the images are an abstraction just to make you sort of, okay, this building is here, this thing is here. I need to go from this thing to this thing, but the text is really what you want to pay attention to. Also.
Yeah,
and the art is beautiful, but it's just in that slightly older style.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a pixelated house, but the house has a soul.
Yeah,
It's been extinguished for 6,000 years.
And that's what I really like about it is that because all these stories are so crazy, it makes your own story, even though it's important to you, it feels like this is just another story in that universe. You're not the chosen one, because everybody's a chosen one, basically.
This is really uncanny how much it resembles our 1-2 switch conversation from earlier in the podcast. Yeah, it's really well.
A lot of the big beats.
I would bet
There's a
that's
character
true.
named Genocide in both.
What'd you score,
I
Torment?
gave it an 8.5.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I think it's really good. I know a lot of people aren't going to play it this week. I know that Horizon is out, which weirdly, by the way, is another post-apocalyptic world, right?
Yeah.
Which is kind of interesting. But I know Horizon's out. I know the Switch is out. I know there's other games coming soon that are going to be occupying people's attention, not the least of which are things like Mass Effect, which is not that far off.
Yeah. Game Club coming soon.
But sometime, I think if you're looking for originality in game design and you're looking for like stories that go off the beaten path from what you've come to expect out of science fiction and fantasy storytelling, you should try to find a way to check this game out. And even though it's not as great on console, I would agree with that. From what I've seen of it, it's totally playable. If that's your only option, I don't think you're gonna like be totally bummed out to have to play it on console. But yeah, play it on PC if you can. But the top level concept is just play it.
And you can beat it in like 2 minutes.
Yeah,
exactly.
Sure. That's kind of long.
All right. Well, speaking of off the beaten path, we should probably get to some community emails here. You guys up for it?
Let's do it.
All right, great. And welcome back to the Game Informer Show. We got some great emails from the community. This is just a confusing episode overall. We now have Jeff Cork.
Yep.
We have Ben Reeves.
Hello.
We have Kyle Hilliard.
Hi.
Josh Holmes is coming up in the interview talking about
Ben Reeves' sweater
his
is
new
here.
studio. God, is it?
Finest
I
sweater.
lost my hoodie, so things are changing dramatically.
Here we go, guys. So we have a bunch of emails that people sent in to podcast@gameinformer.com. They sent in comments about news, feedback about previous episodes, feedback about the magazine. We're looking for questions. We're going to choose our favorite email of this entire batch. And we're going to ship out something very nice for them. Very
Really?
nice.
Very
yeah.
nice.
Is this one of the good ones for real? Because
This is going to be one of the good ones.
Is it another article of clothing?
Man, who can say? First question
Yes.
is from Justin
Mhm.
from San Marcos, Texas. And he has a great question.
Yeah.
He starts out, I don't have a question. I just want to share a good larf that I got from Kyle Hilliard's cover story on Breath of the Wild. At one point, Kyle writes, before going any further, I changed into a warmer shirt and ate a pepper-infused steak. And I was taken with laughter at the idea that Kyle had put down the Joy-Cons and was doing this in the real world while a room full of Nintendo employees looked on in cultural confusion. He then has some role-playing where you play yourself, Kyle, and I'm a Nintendo employee. I guess I would be brand manager Chico at this point saying, is this an American thing? Is he done? Will he play the game some more?
Yeah. Hold on. I'm almost finished.
Anyway, I didn't expect a fit of giggles while reading this article, so thanks for all that and the excellent Zelda coverage.
That's what happened. Was that one of the Nintendo employees that sent that in?
I think so, yeah. You
Is
knew
that
exactly.
fanfic or fan fact?
Welcome to our new segment, Fan Facts. Anyways, Tim from Phoenix, Arizona says, hello, Informers. Hello. I've noticed a stark lack of games with movie tie-ins during the last few years. Think of the cool games we could have based on John Wick. It exists. Rogue One. It exists. Logan basically exists. And Doctor Strange, for example. Hell, even Lego Batman didn't even have a game tie-in. I know 3 games came out previously. That's not the point. Do you feel like developers have all but given up trying to bring these games to market, and why?
He's not looking in the right place. You got to play mobile because that's where all those games came from, right? Or the VR for John Wick.
John Wick does a VR game.
Right,
which,
and then Lego Dimensions has like a play set based on a Lego Batman.
His specific examples, outside that put it to the side, right? Why do you think that we don't even see kids tie-ins anymore?
Because they're expensive.
Yeah. It's all marketing and money.
And you really can get, like, if you want to get word out and you want to make a game, just go where the kids are, which is increasingly tablets.
Yeah.
Free to play tablet stuff.
Match
Yeah.
Also, be careful what you wish for because, like, those types of games were notoriously terrible and everybody made fun of them.
I wish
for a long time, it was like, why aren't there no good licensed games?
Yeah.
Because they're all terrible.
I'm still confused when they would cancel games in development for some of the biggest movies around. I understand it's tough to predict it fully, but remember THQ was making that Avengers game, that first-person Avengers game that was canceled. They're making the Dark Knight game, not THQ. I forget who was publishing it. That was also canceled. Just weird, like these iconic films where the games got so far in development and then, never mind.
Did you know there's like a semi-open world Dark Knight Rises game on mobile? It's like a third-person action game with like an open Gotham.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
On mobile?
Mobile, yeah.
What is happening in
I
this
don't know.
world?
I do kind of miss those movie tie-in games that were very shallow but sort of fun to play a little bit. Like it was nice to go watch like Spider-Man 2 and then have this game that you could play. I mean, Spider-Man 2 is almost a bad example because it was actually a pretty good game.
Yeah.
But like I liked being able to if I really enjoyed a film, even being able to kind of continue to be in that world, even if it was a mediocre game, was kind of fun, and I kind of miss that.
Lego Jurassic World style, yeah.
There you go.
If you're curious about this topic, we did an interview for the Disney Infinity 3 cover story trip with John Blackburn. So if you go look back in that hub, I think it's very insightful about the rise and fall of licensed games. I guess it was just the kind of how it was reforming to become Disney Infinity and kind of these Toys to Life area. And Jeff Corky recently talked to John Blackburn again about the relaunch of Avalanche Studios.
I did.
What did you learn about that? Maybe as it relates to licensed games.
Well, their first game that they're doing is a Cars game.
Cars 3.
Based on Cars 3.
Yeah. From this moment, everything changes. So do you feel like there's a life, or is it just going to be very specific, surefire hits?
I think it's got to be surefire hits. Like Cars is such a huge franchise that making a console game based on that is clearly a good move, but like a John Wick console game, as much fun as that would be to play.
Just go play Max Payne 2.
Do you guys remember when Andy Serkis just casually mentioned that they're making a War of the Planet of the Apes game, and we haven't heard a single announcement about it? That movie's coming up. You think they would have announced the game?
It's a mobile game.
Could have been canceled.
It could be. Could be. Also, in this vein, Ubisoft just announced they're making a new Avatar game because the last one was so well received.
Oh, I hope it has all those classic lines.
We're not in Kansas anymore.
Get off my ship.
This planet is pretty cool. Watch out for the plants.
This next
Sigourney
question.
Weaver's famous line.
This next question is asking for one person specifically. Reeves, I hate to do this to you again 2 times in one episode. Would you mind just clapping? Hey, Andrew Reiner, welcome to the podcast, sir.
Yeah, you're here, man.
It's real.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's been a clap-heavy episode. So we have an email.
What is going on
Just
here?
ignore everything. We have an email that specifically wanted you here, Reiner.
Mhm.
It's from a person who emails in all the time. They have great emails, just the best emails. Stuart Blessman, and his entire email consists of Han Solo origins? ?
What?
I assume he just wants your thoughts on the Han Solo movie.
Oh, the movie coming out.
Unless there's some comic book garbage that's called Han
Well,
Solo Origins.
there was like an old Han Solo kind of book back in the 70s and 80s that followed him and some smugglers.
Okay.
But I'm a little concerned about this movie.
Oh, please. why?
There's some weird stuff going on in the Star Wars universe where
Aliens.
they digitally recreate Tarkin out of CG, right? So they bring back that actor. They have a young Carrie Fisher they bring back.
Yeah.
What are they doing with Han Solo? They completely recast him with a different character.
So you're saying it's just weird for one canonical universe to mix and match? Are we reviving exactly how they used to look versus this?
Yeah, I think they either shouldn't have, or they should have gone all one way or the other. Like, you can't have both. It's really weird to me, right?
Well, hang
Like,
on.
I
What
think
would you
that's
want them to
strange.
do? Would you want them to not do the movie at all, or would you want them to make an entire CG?
I think they had some brilliant shots in Rogue One where they showed Tarkin's reflection in a mirror,
Yeah.
where they had Leia, just the shot of her hood from behind.
Yeah.
We get it. That could have been enough. But now they've opened Pandora's box a little bit, and it's like, well, now you're going to have Donald Glover playing Lando. Brilliant casting. I love that actor. But
yeah.
again, it's like all new actors playing these identities that we know, yet they've done the other thing where it's like, well, we don't want new actors in those roles, and we're just going to
It is
recreate them.
confusing. Yeah, I definitely wish they didn't go the CG route for so much of Rogue One. But I was just thinking about the Han Solo movie the other day. I think about it almost every day. But what is the character arc going to be? Do you think it's going to start out with him being really generous, loving, and then he's going to like lose the love of his life, who is the lady from Game of Thrones, and then by the end he's like, that's it, I'm out for me. I'm only in it for the treasure.
He was like an Imperial pilot, wasn't he? At
Yeah.
one point.
Yeah. So he was an Imperial pilot at one point. I think it's going to be kind of like the Captain Kirk arc in the new Abrams Star Trek universe, where he's always rebellious. Like, I think he's always been kind of on the edge. This
so
character.
no character change throughout the course
I
of the
don't
movie
think
for
so.
Han Solo?
Yeah, I don't think so.
Can they do that?
I think you'll see him have heart and stuff like that, but I
Yeah.
think he's always going to be kind of right on the edge of going too far.
Because that's fun.
Always pushing the limit. Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm excited. Anything new Star Wars I'm excited about, especially it's not just exploring that character, but a different era, a different setting, I think is exciting.
So one of the rumors is that the Woody Harrelson casting, that is connected to the original draft of Empire Strikes Back, right? Where it's like secretly his mentor.
Okay.
Is that right?
I recently just showed you that script.
Yeah, yeah.
Online. I didn't go all the way through it, so I don't remember that character.
Okay.
But that script was bad. Oh my goodness.
We should do a live table read of that original
my
Empire Strikes
God.
Back script. It would be so much fun.
Oof. They
But
made
who
some good edits. I'll say that much.
Yeah. So you think Han Solo, just for predicting this movie, it'll show him leaving the Empire?
I think it'll be him a part of it, meeting Lando for the first time. I think that's going to be all kind of sewn together.
Yeah.
The Falcon, all that kind of stuff.
Prediction.
Chewbacca, I mean,
Meeting
will he have
Chewbacca?
known Chewbacca at that point?
Well,
We'll see.
Will he? I think he will. At some point, look over it like a beaker and be like, carbonite, I don't touch this stuff.
100%.
will he ever say, "I know"?
Yeah? Will they explain how he gets the scar on his chin, like in the beginning of
Oh,
the
that's...
Last Crusade?
It's just the exact whip. He's fending off a lion.
He's gonna rip. He's got like a light jacket, and he rips the sleeves off, so that's
Uh-huh.
how the vest came into play.
Oh, that's true.
there
I
you
think
go.
there are going to be too many of those winky things. Here's what would
Yep.
be smart, is if he falls in love with Emilia Clarke's character, we don't know who that is exactly, and she says, I love you, and he says, I love you.
I love you too.
Love you too. It's like the twist.
That's what you say, Hanson. Just
Right.
So you know how that interaction with
When
another
that
human
happens.
works.
Okay, let me write this
I
down.
want to say real quick, I am the opposite of concerned for that movie because Phil Lord and Chris Miller have knocked down the park on every project that they've
Yeah,
worked on,
that is
so.
that is true. This is a tricky thing, though. Just getting that character right.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's more on the actor. I can't remember the actor's name, but I mean, holy hell. If you're just a little off with him, that's it with Star Wars fans. They will not let that go.
Yeah, Lawrence Kasdan's writing it.
And
Okay.
his son. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And this is, I think Lawrence said this will be his last Star Wars film he's working on, right?
That's
So
exciting.
It's
and
exciting,
strange.
but at the same time, he's the best Star Wars writer, and it'll be sad to see him go.
Yeah. All right, Reiner, you want to clap out of here, buddy?
All right, see ya.
Hey, welcome back, Ben Reeves.
I disagree with everything he said.
Okay. Dear Ben and crew, I was watching the 51 Questions with Miyamoto and Aonuma, and I was wondering how interviews work when you don't speak their language. I'm sure there's a translator available, but does it seem difficult to hold a casual conversation when you have to relay your questions through a third party? Also, what if something is misinterpreted? This is from Corey from New Hampshire.
Should I clap so we can get Bert's in here or something?
Yeah, Reeves, you did this interview.
Yeah. Well, actually, they had the translators, which we showed for that one question.
Yeah, there's a joke
I thought
in
it was
them.
going to be maybe a little bit longer than it. It went smoother than I expected. I'll just say that.
Working through a translator is really tough. You can hear it in our other interviews with Miyamoto and Aonuma that we have on the site now, where it's weird to hear myself ask the questions because I'm asking them like this, and it's very slowly and very clearly. And when it comes to translation, it just really makes you focus on your questions and boil it down. Because when it comes to English-speaking developers, there's always cases. It happens in podcast interviews where you find yourself rambling too much with a question, and then it's not until afterwards you're like, yeah, what is the core of my question here? What am I actually trying to get to? And with translating, it just really makes you focus in to be like, I cannot allow any room for interpretation. This is the specific sentence that I would like a response to.
And I think Japanese developers are kind of notorious. Maybe it's the translation issue or language barrier, but kind of answering your question very literally and giving you just exactly what's on a press release already. So to kind of like draw out a little bit more, that can be hard sometimes in Japanese interviews. But
and it also cuts down on so much time because there's translation and the editing. You have to cut all that out and stuff. But it also just makes it for follow-up questions.
Right.
You're less inclined to get to because like, man, we've got to move on. We have so many topics to cover. But when you're watching the edited version, it's really nice to have those follow-up responses because it's always a little cryptic and vague exactly what they were talking about.
I always wish I spoke Japanese because you sometimes wonder, like, is that translator, is he changing the question a little bit? Is that losing some nuance or something you're trying to get at?
Yeah, for sure.
But
anyways,
what's your
Steven,
favorite word? I think came through.
Yes, that was very clear. Yeah, if you haven't watched that video, go check it out.
Yeah, it's funny.
51 Questions, Miyamoto and Numa. Steven writes in, hello, Benny and the Jets. Very funny, thank you. Greetings from Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Q down tack. Anyways, I've been avidly listening since your coverage of Destiny Rise of Iron. Thank you. One of my favorite interviews you did was with Christian Nairn from Game of Thrones because of the awkwardly hilarious pun you made asking if he was a Kodor. Can you or the other editors think of any other interview faux pas that you made that were also hilarious?
You saying that's a faux pas?
I don't know,
Also, isn't that the second time that's come up in your letter section?
People are
I feel
really?
like somebody else has brought that up.
Yeah, I don't know.
You're just a fan.
I've never gotten more of a reaction to anything I've ever done in my life than people
Just that
saying
pun.
Jesus to that Kodor pun. But
Remember the Transformers interview where
oh my
one of the
God.
developers went like this, and then Ben Reeves just went over and gave the guy a high five and just broke the guy's brain.
So you can find it. It's old. It's Transformers Fall of
How old would that be?
Cybertron.
5+ years old, probably.
Yeah, Fall of Cybertron, our cover story hub. There was a video roundtable called like the gameplay of Transformers Fall of Cybertron, and it's like 20 minutes into this long roundtable, the developer just happened to raise his hand trying to explain something, and Reeves, in an otherwise very dry interview, went for a high five. And it just became this legend. Like we saw that guy years later,
Oh, yeah.
and
He's
he
like,
still,
high five.
yeah, he still brings it up. It's so funny to me.
Yeah.
I forgot about that. Good call.
Also, I love Reeves has a ton of these. We go on a lot of cover stories trips together, but I still love Elder Scrolls Online, that cover story trip. I was setting up for the video interview and it was taking forever. It was like 15 minutes of setup, right? And Reeves was just in there politely with the developers, or two developers. It was the director of Elder Scrolls Online and a quest designer. And so finally get set up and we're like, all right, Reeves, everyone's mic'd up, everything's lit, good to go, let's roll. And Reeves just looked across the table at these developers and just goes, side quests? And there's like a 2-second pause where they're trying to figure out what's happening. And then they took the bait and they're like, yeah, in Elder Scrolls Online, we have a bunch of different side quests for playing. Like, they thought that was actually how Reeves was starting the interview.
It's a good opener.
Yeah.
I start all my interviews now that way. Doesn't matter who I'm interviewing. I had this isn't quite the same thing, but I got to interview Stan Lee several years ago, and
Oh,
it was
wow.
back when Megan worked here, Megan Marie. And,
Yeah.
and she had one of her cute friends that were there too. And so we were like going to meet Stan Lee for the first time. I'm like, oh, this is my childhood hero. I'm going to interview you. I'm like, nice to meet you. And he's like, I don't care about you. And like goes over to the girls' hands and shakes their hands.
So pretty.
Super charming guy.
And now you're wearing his dumb Christmas sweater.
So I had to dress up like a woman to interview Stan Lee.
Yoo-hoo. Tom from Hungary, he notes, says, I'm a video game collector of some sort, and I'm starting to run out of shelf space. I feel like this is a good email when the Switch launches, because I was looking at my own shelf and realizing I need to rearrange all this now, get Wii U out of there. Anyways, my biggest problem, though, is I don't know how to arrange my games. I group them by console primarily, but I don't know what to do with the sequels whose titles aren't the same as the last, or game titles that start with the. How do you arrange and order your physical games? Jeff Cork, you seem like the perfect person to ask about this.
I would like him to be more specific for a sequel that does not start.
Here's a great example. I have this with Rock Band. Because like, oh, you want all these here, but then the Beatles Rock Band, Lego Rock Band, you got to break your alphabetical rule to put it over there.
I don't in that instance.
You don't. You just
Really?
lump them.
So that'd be in B?
Depends. Rock Band is an R. Because band isn't Rock's last
Well,
name.
but it's the Beatles Rock Band, isn't it?
Beatles Rock Band would be under B.
That's
You
what
are
I'm
correct.
asking. But, okay, I get the joke. Wait a minute. You're making a joke on this, aren't you? You're making
I
it
don't
funny.
know.
Cork, what strategies do you have for rearranging shelf space? How do you organize everything?
I go by system, obviously.
Yeah.
Oldest to newest, and then by family. So all the Microsoft stuff is in the same spot. All the Sony stuff, all the Nintendo stuff, and strictly alphabetical.
Strictly.
So
He does
like,
mean strictly.
the Beatles Rock Band. You're going to have some breathing room between you and your buddy's Rock Band proper.
That's
just
interesting.
how
So-
that rock.
You say oldest up top. Like, what's the oldest system you have stuff for?
Oldest stuff that I have some like old Atari 2600 stuff.
All right. That's
neat.
old.
You know what's really depressing, and we're all going to be in that phase now where you clear shelf space for the new system, and like the way I have shelves, like I need to dedicate a bunch of space to it to get it started.
Yes.
And now it's going to be the Switch section. The box is the size of a PSP. It's going to be weird and lumpy. And then there's always that era where it's like, oh, I have 2 games, I have 3
Oh, it's
games.
just
And it just
like-
looks depressing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially with so many games going digital. Like my PS4 library looks probably like this. But I mean, I've got so many games that I've bought.
Yeah,
Yeah.
digitally.
Just digitally, yeah.
Does anybody here just get rid of their stuff when they get rid of their console?
A monster.
Get rid of their
No.
stuff.
I used to be like my wife and I like huge collectors, but right before I moved up here to take this job, we sold off like maybe half the collection.
Sure.
So
I've always
but
regretted
that's-
that every time I've done it.
That's why you only have one
Yep.
child now.
That's right. Gotta put that baby somewhere. Gotta get rid of some games. you know?
Travis from Lino Lakes, Minnesota. Hello, Travis says, has there ever been a Facebook post, tweet, email, or letter that has swayed your opinion or point of view on something in a way you didn't expect?
This is a really tough one.
Yeah, I don't
I mean, I-
think so.
I don't know. I think the answer is yes for me, but I don't know if I have a specific example. Like
Well,
I've
that's perfect.
I certainly have, people tweeting at me something specific or feedback that I take in.
I
But
think
I don't know.
he might
I didn't
be
mean
going.
like a political idea.
I
or
think
something
that's
like
probably
that?
where he's leading it. I don't really want to.
Not political. I don't mean political. Like I mean like anyway.
What sense of political are you talking
He
about?
was pro,
Just-
but now he's anti.
Just
I like Mitt like that.
just the whole sort of like when I say political, I guess I mean like I don't know what I'm saying, man.
You were a PlayStation Pro, but now
You're allowed to
Yeah.
describe what politics are. You don't have to be that gun shy.
I guess I meant politics more as like a broad like groups of people discussing even stuff like PlayStation versus Xbox and like the politics of those groups of people is I guess what I meant.
Sure.
All right, Kyle. I wish you made sense. I had a more lighthearted take on this, where I was on a crusade after seeing Rogue One, where Darth Vader makes a pun in Rogue One. I'm like,
Yeah.
that's so stupid. Anakin Skywalker is the least jokey guy. Why is Darth Vader making a joke? And then we had Mitch Dyer, who used to be at IGN, now works for EA. He just tweeted out a YouTube video, which was a compilation of like, hey, here's all the times Darth Vader's been jokey or sarcastic. And I sat back and watched that YouTube clip and was like, I stand fully corrected. Like, you
Really?
forget how sarcastic and kind of, I don't know, playish Darth Vader is with so many lines.
I want that ship, not excuses.
I assure you, Lord Vader, my men are working as fast as they can.
Perhaps I can find new ways to motivate them. Perhaps you think you're being treated unfairly? No. Good. It would be unfortunate if I had to leave a garrison here.
So there we go.
Well, but do you like the pun?
No, I still don't like that.
But
Rogue
you
One
feel like
vibe.
it's okay to be in the film. now.
It fits his character more than I thought.
So your complaint now is it's not even among his top 10 zingers. And Darth Vader, as we all know, a real cut up.
Have you seen Darth Vader in open mic night? Oh, it just kills.
It goes
whole
a little
crowd killed
something like this.
Become mine.
Nailed it.
Nailed it.
Cut and
Get off. And then water. Right in the face.
Mark
Seltzer
from,
water.
Mark from Surprise, Arizona says, "Hey, GI crew. Recently on your website, you had a poll on who's your favorite Kong. We do good work here. Now, I chose Funky. But where it gets weird is you have multiple of the same Kongs. Isn't the original Donkey Kong now Cranky Kong, and Donkey Kong Jr. is now Donkey Kong?
Sure.
Do you guys ever have these crazy conversations in the office? What game series do you guys get really nerdy about?
Okay, look, first of all, that list excluded Kiddy Kong, so the whole thing is just a
Because
wash
no
anyway.
one in their right mind would choose Kitty Kong.
But he needs to be present for the voting. It's important.
Here,
Someone out there loves his strength.
I don't want to get political, but he's a bit of a spoiler candidate. You're throwing away your vote if you're going for Kiddy Kong.
Well, I got to vote how I feel.
You want instant runoff? Then we would solve that problem.
So the answer is no. We don't have nerdy conversations. Like
no,
that.
that's all this office is nerdy
Yeah.
conversations. Like, especially issue meetings, we're talking about top 10s. That is where it gets insane. One that I always think of is we had in the magazine top 10 mechs. And everyone's going
brother.
around talking about the coolest mechs in all of gaming. And then I'll leave them unnamed. But one person in the office is like, oh, Liberty Prime from Fallout 3. No, that's a robot. What's the difference? It's a mech. It's the same thing. So then there was much more of a rabbit hole than you could possibly imagine. You thought that Torment discussion went deep. This is just like a 45-minute conversation about trying to separate robots from mechs.
Right.
And then Matt Helgeson, who was working here at the time, had to interrupt and say, you guys, we're all going to die someday anyway. It doesn't matter.
What's funny
which was
about that,
nice.
too, is like we argued for an equally long pound of time whether or not we could even use the word mech, I think.
Because there's like weird
Yeah, I
legal
don't know,
issues
there's
surrounding
legal
the word
issues
mech.
there, so.
Well, we just had one the other day where we're in an issue meeting and talking about the age of video game characters.
Oh yeah.
And Reiner's like, yeah, I just Googled it real quick. Turns out Big Boss is 42 now. And like all the Metal Gear fans are looking at each other like, what the hell is he talking about? To the point that I think we had to stop the meeting for Wade and Miller to talk about how Cortana isn't actually 24.
Right. Somebody said she was 10, and that doesn't make sense.
Do you guys have any standout nerdy conversations?
Almost every interaction with Miller. If you ask Miller, he's like the best for this kind of thing. You're
Nicest man alive.
Yeah.
like, oh, this is not a criticism.
Okay,
like
okay.
he's a big stinker or something.
Yeah.
He
If
brought
you're
us all
like,
cheesecake today.
Yeah.
yeah, it was great.
It was edible.
Yeah, there you go. But yeah, if you ask him anything like, so what's going on with Halo's story? Or say like, hey, with Destiny, you like the Grimoire cards? Holy man, you will...
Honestly, you don't even have to ask him a question. You can be like, oh, I played some Destiny last night. It's like, well, let's launch all into
His
this.
hands go into
Yeah.
this position.
Where it's folded over his chest.
You know that you're gonna get it.
Yep.
Yeah. I hope you don't have to go to the bathroom.
Yeah, it's got a
or
big piece of lore right in your face.
shove a sponge down your pants.
It was,
Anyways.
did we talked about this before? Just to shoot off that, but Miller did a lore bit on Destiny. It's on the website. You can go check it out. It's like explains Destiny's story better than the game does. And we had to get that proved by Bungie.
Just so he can make it like sure
Like,
that it's
official,
like 100%.
hey, check this off, make sure this is all right.
Yeah.
And they came back, they're like, yeah, we're not sure we have anybody in the office right now who can like proof this and say this is all correct. Like he knows their lore better than they do.
Miller is a very smart person and an amazing individual, and we love him dearly. But never ask him a question. Anyways, Jerry from South Texas writes in and says, hey, Ben and crew, hello. I hope this question makes it to you before the podcast recording.
Wait, did you just get that in hot off the press?
No, he says, I also hope there are no
paradox?
embargo issues preventing you from answering it. But will the Nintendo Switch tablet be able to charge outside the dock?
Yes.
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 Also,
port on the
Plug it in.
can you take
Still
your...
has to be plugged into the wall, though.
I'll be damned. Can you take... Will umbilical cords work?
Sure. I
Okay.
haven't tried
Hey, real quick. I know you're excited about this next one, but I want to tell you, when you plug it in on the bottom, though, you can't have it set upright because the cord is like this.
Yeah.
So if you set up like...
Can't use the kickstand.
You cannot use the kickstand.
It's like a Dreamcast controller.
So it's not like the port is on the back where you just plug that in and you just carry on as usual. So if you want to play plugged in, you got to stick it in the dock.
Yeah, that is good.
Or-
Another point to make is like the dock is how you plug it into your TV.
Right.
Because I took it home one night. I'm like, oh, I'll just plug it into my TV when I get home. I'm like, there's no way to plug it into your TV without the dock.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, there's not like an HDMI
Right.
port on it or anything.
Yeah. All right, moving on.
anyway, just
Also, can you take your Switch to your buddy's house and insert
Nope.
your console on his dock?
that's
Yes.
rude. You should ask first.
You really should,
but yes.
or have a
Okay.
screen protector on
I
it.
think they call that docking. Anyways, moving on. Will from Palo Alto, California says, how much technical know-how is required for your job? Do you take it upon yourself to learn programming jargon to get the most out of interviews?
No, I mean, a programming question for a coder isn't really super. The answer is not super interesting. Like, it's a fascinating science, but in terms of like the art of the video game, like it doesn't usually lead to interesting answers. Like, how did this code come together for
Yeah.
the sequence?
Right.
you
I
know?
always find that I'm not very technical, very surface level everything. As long as like the person I'm interviewing knows where I'm coming from, like I'm not an expert on this stuff, but I always I feel like developers, they're hesitant to get too technical, but that's where I think their brilliance really shines.
Right.
Like
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
know it's controversial at the time, but like walking through some of the more technical aspects of No Man's Sky in this video when we were visiting Hello Games, I think is a good example of like Sean Murray getting somewhat technical, but I was just trying to push him even further. Like, no, please, this is what people want. Like, go
Sure.
nuts.
Right.
Yeah, I find that stuff fascinating. I did a classic on Pitfall. And
Yeah.
like researching like why Pitfall is just a technological marvel, especially for the
Hmm.
time, is very interesting. But like, yeah, trying to like boil that down to like a layman can understand. Anybody who's laying down just totally gets it. I think that's what you need to be able to do as a journalist. You don't
Yeah.
really have to understand the high technical part of it, but
Right.
but making that translation from somebody who's a programmer and maybe a nerdier kind of straight-laced guy who
Yeah.
doesn't talk
Who
well.
stands up?
The whole
Yeah.
Yeah.
the whole goal is that you want to talk to people who are smarter than you, and you are kind of a communicator.
You're a go-between.
Yes, exactly. Dear Ben and beautiful people, love the show. Thank you. My name is Franz, and I'm from Texas. I'm a gaming enthusiast. So are we. And I love to follow the industry, but along with that, I found an idea or a concept brewing in my mind of a game I'd love to create. So my question for someone who has zero connections in the industry but has a concept that they truly believe would make for a solid game, how would one potentially be able to share said concept with the dev team to perhaps see if it would somehow be possible to pursue? Does this even happen?
They don't want to hear it
They don't want to hear it. I'm
because if
sorry,
you tell them,
Franz.
like legally, they want to be insulated from that kind of stuff.
Right.
Because if they do something that later on seems similar to it, then that person can go back to and say, I pitched this idea
Mhm.
of this gun game, and now they've released gun game.
Yeah, I've been pitching Super Mario Odyssey for so many years. And more than that, I mean, it's important to remember, Franz from Texas, like developers who have spent their entire lives in the industry, they're a texture artist on the Call of Duty series, even like that level, I'm sure they have 7 ideas of games in their mind that they
Right.
would love to make, and they're trying to work their way up this ladder within companies so that one day they might be able to pitch and get this game made.
Right.
There's no shortage of ideas.
It would be interesting to take that idea to a game jam.
right.
Like
Yeah.
if you're in your area, if they're having one, find some smart folks who are willing to work with someone who may not have a lot of programming expertise.
Yeah,
or
that's where you
design
should pitch it.
expertise. But yeah, see if you can work that, because in worst case scenario, people are out 24 hours, and that's that.
Yeah, for sure. But I think developers are key to focus in on the fact that, hey, there's no such job in video game companies as the ideas guy. Like, if you have an idea, get programming, find some skill, build up something, and then work with people, if you don't like programming, who do like programming, and then learn to contribute something else really tangible to the project.
Take a look at Unity. you
There we
know,
go.
Start dabbling with that.
Yeah, for sure. Anyways, Jose, Kyle, is it the person a vegan? They just wrote vegan Jose. Anyways, they say,
That's
hey,
how
folks.
vegans sign their name.
They instead of thanks, it's vegan.
It becomes their first name when you become a vegan.
Is that right? To date, says Jose, I've had a chicken hawk and a raccoon and
I thought he was vegan.
and a capuchin monkey as pets. All animals were rescues and thus secured legally and humanely. All right, we got you, Jose. Relax. We're not the feds. What's the
What
weirdest
state is he in?
vegan? What's the weirdest pet you've had and or your favorite pet? Frigate favorite pet. Weirdest pet you've ever had.
I don't know if I had weird pets. I had a fish that lasted one day.
Did you
Survived one day before he died.
Did you keep it outside the
Yeah, I
tank?
still have it. Yeah.
It's just rolling around your floor.
We had like guinea pigs when I was younger. That's
Yeah.
kind of
I
maybe a
currently
little
have guinea
off.
pigs.
Yeah, do you?
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Same
cute.
here. Don't say that about your daughter.
Really?
I have
We
2
should get
human
them
children.
together.
I was a big anole guy, little lizards growing up.
Oh,
Super
okay.
into those. Pretty into snakes.
Pet snakes?
turtles. Yeah. I like lizards.
Are you a ferret guy too?
No. We had like gerbils and stuff. And then I guess we had like goats. I guess those are
Oh,
kind
you
of
grew up on a
pets.
farm. That's
Don't say
right.
that about your
Farmish.
sister.
Oh lordy.
Oh boy.
But it'd be a lot of like, oh, I caught a tree frog outside. Now I'm going to keep it in this cage until it dies.
So I always thought you didn't like pets, Hanson.
That's not true. That's a fallacy.
You just don't like dogs or cats.
I'm allergic to everything with hair.
Okay.
Okay.
Which is why I insist that all my coworkers shave their eyebrows off, their heads. If you watch the video version of the show, you understand.
This is all digital.
Yeah. And so it's a frustration when pets are in a house. I'm at a party and it's like, oh, great, now I'm going to be allergic. So I'm whiny about it, but I don't hate animals. I like outdoor pets.
Okay.
Is my thing. Sure.
So you just like wild animals.
Yeah, outdoor pets.
That's right. No, honestly, I mean, you guys didn't have outdoor pets? Like, all my pets were
No,
outdoor
we didn't grow up
pets.
on a farm.
grew up
Like
in a
that.
That's
city,
the way
yeah.
pets should belong.
If it's
They belong
outside, it's no
outdoors.
longer a pet.
No, it is, because they don't run away. It's all good. What would happen if you just brought your pets outside?
I might let my cat outside all
They
the
would
time.
All right.
immediately die.
See?
Well,
Why
he
does it
doesn't
just-
live out. He's not an outside pet.
Well, he should be. All pets need to be outside pets. It's a crusade.
All right.
What's your favorite email?
Pets?
I like the interview. I like the interview faux pas one actually because that brought back some fun memories of Ben Reeves doing funny things.
Okay.
Am I the only one that does stupid things during interviews?
Yeah, most of us have some sense of decorum. Like, yeah, we're trying to pretend we're at least somewhat professional, even though we have gross beards and wear hoodies all the time because, like, we're 14-year-old idiots.
Okay.
Whatever.
Well, that's great. Okay, so Steven, I can give it to that. You on board for that
Sure.
one, Cork?
Vegan Steven.
Oh, that was a different guy.
Different guy.
Oh.
Why don't you clap for us real quick there? Yeah, that sounds great.
Actually, Rich, would you mind clapping?
I'm gonna clap your face.
Just clap real quick. All right, there we go. Bye, Ben Reeves.
Oh, thank God.
Problem
So,
solved.
Steven, congratulations from Alabama. We'll send you out something real nice. So thank you for your loving question. And again, a reminder, send emails into podcastgameinformer.com and we might read it on air. You might win something great.
And if you get read last, you'll be emailed a week.
As for now, stay tuned to the show. It's going to get good. It's going to get technical. We're talking to Josh Holmes, formerly from 343, about his new venture at Midwinter Games and everything the studio is looking forward to in the future. So stay tuned for that. Josh Holmes, welcome to the Game Informer Show, sir.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's an honor to have you. You're smiling. You're in a clean house. What is this world that you're living in now? How are you doing these days?
I'm doing great. I'm living the indie dream right now. It's been a couple months since I left Microsoft in 343, and I've been hanging out with my family, hanging out with friends, and then starting to build up our new studio, Midwinter.
Okay, is this like a studio out of your house? Are you renting office space? The whole deal?
Right now, we're operating out of a house, and then as we continue to grow, we'll look at additional space.
Okay, is it just you at this point, or what is the team looking like?
No, there's 4 principal founders that started the company, and so all these are guys that are friends of mine that I've known for years. 2 were individuals I worked with at 343. So Fred Fitta-Person, he was the principal architect and lead over campaign and gameplay on Halo 4 and Halo 5. Peter Brzezinski was our principal lead multiplayer networking and UI engineer on Halo 5 and Halo 4. And then Daryl Anselmo is someone who I've known since the beginning of my career in the industry. He was my creative partner and co-creator of NBA Street, Def Jam Vendetta, Def Jam Fight for New York. We founded a studio together in Vancouver, and it's been a few years, and we decided to kind of get the band back together and start working together again. So that's been awesome.
How long have you been talking about doing this?
I think it's a dream that I've had for years to go out and build up an independent studio again, and this just felt like the right time, the right moment in my career. I'd been at 343 for 8 years, 8 great years working on Halo, and it was a pretty incredible experience. An amazing team of people that I had a chance to work with, but 8 years is a long time. And I think, all of us were excited about doing something independent and new.
Yeah. So propaganda games, you were at a while back that did like the Turok reboot and stuff like that. Were you involved in the founding of that studio as well? And can you kind of compare what it was like back in those days, in the early days of an indie studio versus now?
Yeah, definitely. So I founded that studio with Daryl and a couple of other individuals, Howard Donaldson and George Freitas. And we had all worked together at Electronic Arts for a number of years when we started Propaganda. I think the big difference there was, we started working pretty quickly with Disney Interactive. We started building, at first it was a third-person action adventure game that we were building for them. And then they gave us the opportunity to work on the Turok reboot, which was really interesting because at that time they were talking about getting into mature-rated games. They were talking about trying to build this Miramax of gaming label, and so they had turned to us and said, you guys can be kind of the principal studio that leads the effort there. And we ended up pretty rapidly getting acquired by them. So, in that case, we were independent for maybe 6 months before we sort of came under the Disney banner. And from that point, it was just really, really rapid growth. We went from probably 15 people in the first few months to about 155 when I left, which was a little over 3 years, which is just massive amounts of growth, especially for, that point in the industry. So that's not something I really want to repeat. I think, it was a great learning experience, but growing that quickly sort of takes its toll.
Yeah, so even if Disney makes a big push into games again, Midwinter, not interested.
Yeah, no, we're happily independent.
Okay, right on. So there's so many little smaller indies kind of splitting off and branching off from huge AAA teams. Is there always just kind of like internal tension within large teams about this group's talking in the kitchen a lot? Are they going to go forge their own path? Is that a constant, discussion point amongst giant teams?
I mean, I wouldn't call it internal tension. I think that anytime you have a group of creative individuals who work together day in and day out, they get inspired by one another and they dream and they have things that they want to pursue. And I think you've seen that from a number of really talented teams that have sprung up across the industry. There's just a game that was released end of last year from some X343 folks, Astroneer, which is really awesome. I don't know if you've had a chance to play it. Great game. I think they're still in early access on Steam. But I think that is an example of a team that sort of had an idea and a vision and a passion that was very different and outside of what they were working on day to day, that decided to break off and go and do something about it. And I think that's just natural for creative folk.
And you see so many success stories based on people branching off that it's like, yeah, why not us? Why not me?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think by any means it's success is a guarantee for anybody in the games industry. It's tough to build great games, but it's an adventure doing it, and I think we're all lucky in the industry to get paid to do something that we love.
Yeah. So without getting into specifics on your new project, like what creative itches can be scratched for you and the team that couldn't have been scratched at 343? You guys were tackling so much at that studio.
Yeah, I think, we had a great experience working on Halo, but, you're working on a franchise that is storied, has an amazing legacy and a lot of expectations that go along with that. And then you also have just a mammoth, massive scale production that's required to deliver a blockbuster AAA title like that. And so, I think more than anything, we're sort of drawn to this idea of, okay, well, can we be smaller, more focused, and have a core group that doesn't have as large a footprint? And then, you're just going to have to sort of wait and see what we go out and build. We're still so early on in the journey at this point.
Is it nice just to get away from the pressure of having that license like Halo?
I think the pressure was a good thing in a lot of ways. Like you have this incredible fan base, all of these passionate people who love the franchise, and it's really an honor to be given the reins and have the opportunity to go and build something there. And I'm really proud of what we managed to accomplish, what the team has managed to accomplish, and the team continues on to this day and I'm sure they're going to build incredible things. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely pressure there, and I think you feed off of that pressure if you're someone that wants to be at the top of your game and at the top of your industry, and all of the folks that are at 343 that I worked alongside, they're exactly that. I think they feed off of that pressure.
Yeah. I'm just wondering what it's like emotionally to leave someplace that you were so attached to and to leave, the Halo series behind. It must be such a weird conflict of you're leaving behind a lot of like frustrations and baggage, but also, I mean, you must have just so much of your blood, sweat, and tears are in that series now. There must be such a connection as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's close to a decade spent working on the series, and I had a deep connection to Halo from the beginning of the franchise, which is what drew me to want to move my family down here and work on it in the first place. But it was just an incredible experience.
So what does it feel like? Does it feel like a divorce?
No, I don't think so at all. I think that team is filled with friends and people who I respect, more than anyone I've ever worked with before in the industry. So in a lot of ways, I think it feels a little bit like you're leaving a family, but at the same time, we're all cheering for one another, and I know they're going to do amazing things with the future of that franchise, and I'm sure people will be anxiously looking forward to what we create.
Did you always just see as like the early days of propaganda as a really exciting time in your career, a really satisfying time, and you're just trying to recreate that as much as possible?
Oh, I love, I'm very entrepreneurial. I love the idea of striking out and doing something that may seem on its face to be, incredibly challenging or impossible. I mean, that is part of what drew me to want to go to 343 in the first place, was that nobody really believed that anyone could build a studio worthy of taking the reins on the Halo franchise, and that goes not just for fans or I think the media, but just for the industry at large. I spoke to so many people, friends who I'd known for years, who were like, "You're crazy! What are you doing? You can't build a studio and go take on Halo. That's nuts." So yeah, the idea of striking out and building something new that that we're all going to pour our love and passion into is really exciting. And it was similar when we set out to build propaganda, and I think it's just a great adventure.
Yeah, for sure. So looking back on those early days of 343, it was just a monumental task to go from nothing and then to build up to like, oh, just go ahead and make Halo 4. How hard can it be? Come on. When you look back on those days, what stands out? What was the vibe like in the earliest days of 343?
I think it was interesting because we were bringing together all of these incredibly talented folks from all around the industry, and everyone had this intense love for the franchise, but many people had not worked together before, and so there's sort of that feeling out process of like, okay, how do we learn to work together and trust one another and rely on one another as we kind of go on this great journey together, and then how do we find a way to bring together our individual experiences with Halo and build something that feels cohesive and makes sense? Because I think one of the great things about Halo is you have all of these different aspects to the game, and it's sort of grown and expanded over time over the course of that franchise. And so everybody comes to the franchise with their own perspective, their own elements that really speak to them, and so finding a way to bring that together from such a large and diverse team, I think, was challenging at first, and it took a while for us to get our sea legs. But in the end, I think there was a kind of a turning point halfway through the project where everybody could really see what we were building. We could start to feel like, yeah, this is it. We're on the right track. This is our vision. This is coming together. And then it was just a hard push to the end, as it always is in game development.
So you feel like you were struggling to get your sea legs until halfway through development? That seems later than I expected for just coalescing a vision.
Well, I think roughly, yeah, I mean, the game was in development for almost 4 years, I think, from early concept. So yeah, I think it took the first couple of years to really get the team to gel and to really fill out the entirety of the team in the studio, it takes a long time to hire the right talent, bring people together, get people used to working together with one another. So, yeah.
When you look back on that era, do you just reflect on certain paths that the team could have gone down that now just seem preposterous?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I don't spend a lot of time looking back, to be honest. I'm always sort of focused on what's next. But I think there are probably any number of different possibilities that that are open to you at the beginning of any project, and it's all about committing to a vision and a path forward. And I'm really proud of what we built with Halo 4, and I wouldn't change a thing.
Yeah, for sure. Can you shed any light on that era of 343 where Ryan Payton came from Konami and he was originally going to be the creative director? And he's talked about it on podcasts as well, and he's reflected on it and said, like, boy, I was so young. It was a weird, scary time. And then he eventually left, and then you rose up. What was that transition like? What were the reasons behind everything?
Yeah, I mean, so when I got to 343, Ryan was already there, and he was a creative director working on what would become Halo 4. And Ryan and I have stayed in touch to this day, and I think he's gone on to do amazing things. But he's kind of spoken to it that it was a huge challenge. It was a brand new team, a very large team, and a huge endeavor to take on. And I think that in the end, he sort of decided that wasn't the thing for him, and the thing that he was going to be really passionate about and want to focus his time and his energy on. And he broke off and went down, kind of an indie road himself. And as I said, he's done amazing things. So.
And now you're trying to build up a camouflage of your own with Midwinter.
That's right. Yeah, but without the J at the end. So.
Did you ask for any advice from Ryan? He seems like it's a pretty easy analogy for you.
Yeah, actually, funnily enough, when we first founded the studio and kind of going through that process of standing things up, we went and grabbed lunch with Ryan and just asked him for some of his advice and learnings over the years, and he was really gracious in sharing a lot of his experiences. So.
Okay, right on. Yeah, you had so much experience in the industry working on some of the best games of all time, like NBA Street. I know I've kissed your ass too much in the past about NBA Street. But when you look back at the whole of the 343 saga now, what do you think that overall experience taught you about the industry that you didn't know before? What did you learn to appreciate more?
I just really, and it's not something I think that was a brand new realization to me, but it just sort of reinforced how diverse the talent in this industry is, and how challenging and fulfilling it can be to bring together people from all these different walks of life with all these different perspectives and really passionate feelings about the games that they want to create, and try to gel them together, weave them together in a way that makes sense. And so I think on Halo, it was operating at a scale beyond anything I had done in my career in the past. The team at its peak on Halo 5, I think, was getting up to almost 400 people. And that's just a huge number of people, especially, when you're kind of helming the ship to try and, get everybody facing in the same direction, get everybody working together. And there's always going to be differences of opinion and contrasts of personality. And so I think it was just reinforcing at a much larger scale the challenges that come as a result of working with large and diverse teams.
So we've talked about leaving like 343. What does it feel like just to leave the larger organization of Microsoft?
It's interesting. I love my time at Microsoft. It's a really amazing company, especially when you sort of look back on the history of that company and how it's grown over the years. And being able to be exposed as someone who is, fairly senior in the organization, to be exposed to all of these different facets of Microsoft that, aren't necessarily part of the day-to-day of game development, but seeing all the amazing technology and ways in which Microsoft builds things that kind of enriches the lives of people around the world. Not things that I'm directly involved in building or have any aspiration to build necessarily, but that was a unique experience for me because up until that point, all of my time in the industry was spent either working within a dedicated game development publisher like Electronic Arts, or as an independent game studio, or even as part of Disney. That's a very creative focused organization. It's something where all of their energy goes into telling stories and building experiences. So to go to a company that is at its core a technology company was really interesting for me.
Is it nice once you leave a company like Microsoft to get hands-on with game development again? I mean, I know you're in the trenches with Halo, but there's still hundreds of people below you at the same time. So what is it like now, and how much do you enjoy the process of actually getting your hands dirty?
I love it, and to be honest, that's one of the big things that drew me to want to go off and build something independent again, is that you spend a lot of time working with amazing, talented folks where you're relying on them to really bring together your vision, and you're delegating a lot of that work. But as a result, you're so far away from the hands-on development process. And I'm a game developer. I worry about how long can I go being detached from the day-to-day of game development before I lose touch with what it means to build games. And then how does that allow me to be an effective leader for people if they're like, that dude, he's clueless, he hasn't built a game in years. So I think that was a big draw for me, and it's been incredibly fulfilling to get back in and not only start doing things that I've done before earlier in my career, but now, as we're just so early on and bootstrapping everything, starting to get my hands dirty and learn things I've never done before.
So what does it look like? What are you getting out of the experience these days that you haven't appreciated before about game design?
I think just being able to have a hand not only in the pure kind of design focus, but also I'm learning a lot on content creation and a lot of the pipelines for things like creating materials and all sorts of things that I've never really done before in my career. And it's not as though I'm going to be the person who is ultimately going to create that content, but learning what it takes to build that content is fulfilling personally, and I think also gives me a better perspective when I'm interacting with people that are focused in those areas.
Yeah, for sure. I assume you're using Unity. Is that the way to go?
Can't talk about what we're doing.
Oh, really? Not even Engine. Okay. What about this for a vague question? The project you're working on is an idea you've had for years and years that you've just been champing at the bit to get to, or is it the team coming together and figuring out what was the new idea everybody wanted to tackle?
I think it's more the latter. I think
Okay.
there are certainly ideas that have been ruminating in each of our minds for years, and we bring elements of that to the table as we start to brainstorm and talk about what we want to build. But ultimately, we were very clear about, hey, we want to kind of take a break, go and kind of decompress, get our brains clear, and then let's talk about what's this next journey going to be and what are we going to build together, and just have the confidence knowing that, hey, we have a great team. We're all capable of doing amazing things. So whatever we decide to build, we have the confidence in feeling like we're going to be able to build something great. We don't have to kind of worry about that before we go off and make the leap.
And you guys are just going to be self-funding for a while then?
I don't know. We're gonna find out. We're pretty early on in the journey as a team.
Okay, right on. Can we rule out a free-to-play mobile game?
I don't want to rule out anything.
Really, Josh? Even that? All right.
Yeah, it could be board games. Could be, who knows?
Okay, okay, interesting. Could be 1-2 Switch DLC. Really, anything. It's all up for grabs.
It's all out there. Absolutely anything.
Are you sick of games like Halo?
I'm never gonna get sick of Halo. I love Halo.
Okay.
Yeah. I play a huge swath of different types of games, and depending on my mood, I go in any number of different directions.
Yeah. So now you said you like to look forward. in your career more than back. But if I forced you to turn around and look at the breadth of your career, is there one aspect, one area you think you're most proud of personally, where you feel like you tackled the most?
Man, I don't know. I think there are moments, like if I look back at my career, there are that um, things that I've worked on that all sort of share a common, like, hey, we're defying the odds. We're trying to accomplish something that is, seemingly impossible. If you go back through, like, NBA Street was a game that was canceled, but the executive producer never told us that the game was canceled and just silently allowed it to continue to be funded. And nobody knew that they were still paying for it to be built. And then when it was released, it was released with no marketing support whatsoever, and it had the inverse curve that I've never seen on any other game, where it came out and it sold, like, I don't remember, like 6,000 units week 1, and then 20,000 week 2, and then 50,000 week 3, and just like built through word of mouth. And then they started funneling. They're like, oh crap, we better market this thing. So there's that. Def Jam was intergalactic space wrestling, canceled WCW with a Japanese developer, and like the most ridiculous concept ever of bringing together hip hop and fighting. And again, never should have got made,
Yeah.
never should have been successful. And then Halo 4 was, brand new team taking over for arguably one of the best developers of all time on one of the most successful series of all time, as a brand new studio built from the ground up. Totally should have fallen on our faces. And even, looking at what we did with Propaganda and Turok, and that was a super challenging development, particularly with some of the changes that took place strategically with Disney midway through the project. But again, brand new team, built from the ground up on new generation of consoles, tackling a new genre that none of us had built before, doing mature rated shooter for the Walt Disney Company. Crazy. So I think those are the things, when I look back on my career, that I'm most proud of, is how we've kind of risen up, and each of the teams that I've sort of just mentioned has managed to overcome those great odds.
Yeah. And stuff like Pirates of the Caribbean, which is the canceled game with Disney. I'd imagine there's a lot of accomplishments within that as well that never saw the light of day, sadly.
Yeah. I think most of that game was developed after I had left the studio.
Oh, is that right?
I was there for the early concept phase of Pirates.
How could EA not have faith in NBA Street? That's what I can't wrap my mind around. Especially like you have Michael Jordan in there. It's like the most easily sellable game now in retrospect. So how?
In retrospect, yeah. When we first pitched the concept, we were basically asked to go and make a 3-on-3. Was it 2-on-2? I think it was 2-on-2 actually originally. Indoor arcade basketball game. And that was sort of the marching orders. It was go and build NBA Showtime or NBA Jam. And we were really inspired by N1 mixtapes and hip hop culture, urban culture, street ball, and sort of brought that whole perspective to it. And nobody got it. Like internally, everybody was like, yeah, no, there's no there. Nobody wants this. And so I can see how it was a hard sell being there and sort of understanding, the climate and who we were pitching to and everything. But I remember the first time we showed the game at the All-Star game in Washington and allowed kids to get their hands on it and start playing it. And there were lineups all weekend, like out the door, with people just going and getting back in line to play it over and over again. And we just knew we had a hit at that point.
What is it? Is it just the simplicity that just conveys it so clearly exactly what this is?
I don't know. I mean, at that point, there were a couple of things that we were doing that hadn't been done before in a basketball game. We made the decision to play to 21 as opposed to, having quarters, which seems totally, not like a big deal right now. But at the time, nobody had done that before. And then we had the whole concept of, the game breaker and the game breaker meter. And that was like taking that inspiration from Street Fighter Alpha at the time and being like, well, what if we brought that sort of general concept into a sports game? So I think in the end, when you play it, you look at it, it's like it all makes sense. But when you're sort of pitching your ideas, people are like, "You're crazy! Like that doesn't exist." So
And then on top of that craziness, he started to add an alien and Yeti, and it got
yeah. Those were actually holdovers from one of the original concepts, which was way more cartoony and arcadey. And again, that was like being pushed down that kind of NBA Jam direction. And so we built a couple of those characters, and then we were sort of hiding them away. And we're like, maybe we'll make these unlockables, and make these kind of special Easter eggs in the game.
So originally, was it just more of a crazy crew of characters like Overwatch or something, where it's just non-humans on the court, whatever?
It was more in that direction. Yeah, there was an Egyptian court by the Sphinx with a pharaoh kid that could like shoot crazy threes, and like there were some pretty goofy cheeseball elements in that game early on that we steered away from pretty quick.
Okay, well, I think you got the right balance. Like it's fun, it's grounded enough for those fans, and then fans who don't really give a crap about basketball, like me, still could fall madly in love with that silly thing.
Oh, I'm glad you liked it.
Oh yeah, sorry, I'll stop kissing your ass again. Well, right on, man. Well, it's got to be nice. We never, it's got to be scary at times to start up a new studio and just to be able to look back on your career and realize, man, I've pulled off these crazy efforts time and time again. It's got to give you some ounce of confidence moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm really lucky to have three co-founders that are just, incredibly strong, amazingly talented, and great friends. So I'm excited to see what we build together.
Yeah. So where should people know or go if they want to learn more about your next project?
Well, keep an eye out. I think when we're ready to start sharing information, we'll probably put something out there. But for now, we're definitely very low-key, sort of stealth mode early on in the journey.
Do you expect like a teaser trailer in 2017? Do you have any sort of timeline of when to get out there?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. I'm sure when we're ready to make an announcement, you'll be one of the first to hear.
Okay. All right. Well, we look forward to it, man. All right. But thanks again for your time, Josh. Really appreciate it.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
And thank you so much for watching or listening to this episode of the Game Informer Show. Be sure to tune in next Thursday and we'll have a new episode waiting for you. Bye, everybody.